I was like, in the first scene, I'm like, okay, I'm prepared to have like Reddit on my phone. I'm prepared to just like have this be in the background. And then saw it was subtitled. I'm like, damn it. I have to look at it. Okay, fine. And I'm watching it. I'm like, crap, I'm really compelled by this.
I feel like I need to go watch it before the show now.
You should. It's actually a really compelling movie.
Okay.
So
I have one complaint about the entire movie.
Because we've got to talk about it next week.
And I'm going to save it because I want to see. Jeremy said he had a complaint. I want to see if it's the same one, but I want to spring it.
Okay.
It'll be interesting.
It'll be interesting. All right. Which begs the question: are we ready?
I thought
You're ready.
I thought
Let's go for it.
We're not. I didn't introduce the show.
I thought that was the intro.
This is the intro now. Welcome to the Casual Fanatics. I am Paul Stadden, joined by Jeremy Brazel and Sydnee Johnson. Every single week, we do all the pop culture heavy lifting so you don't have to. Although it'd be nice if you went and, maybe watch some other episodes of this show and kind of get a feel for what we do every single week. This week, I am so looking forward to this because we are talking about remakes. What is better, the original or the remake? And we're each going to come up with an example. We're each going to discuss them, and we're going to see at the very end who came up with the best example, and we kind of give the participation trophy prize thing and make everybody feel better about themselves. I'm going to turn off my air conditioner so you don't hear it running through the entire show, so I can sit here and sweat as I talk about King Kong, because that's what I'm talking about. I'm looking forward to this, guys. Mostly, I just love that
Love that you worked the air conditioner in there.
Yeah, I did. Trust me, it's the thing that makes this studio tolerable on a May night. Because we are still in our COVID quarantine episode era, sadly. But
and we're in Florida.
It gives us more of an opportunity to be able to talk about pop culture stuff, which makes me really, really happy. So remakes versus the originals. I am going to talk about King Kong. Now, there are a lot of King Kong movies, but I'm going to be dealing with the 4 main King Kong movies that we all need to actually care about and discuss. There are a lot of sequels that came out, and actually a really good one from the sequel for the original called Son of Kong, which came out like the next year, which was amazing. But I'm going to be talking about King Kong, the original 1931 version, 31 or 32, 31. I'm going to be talking about the 76 version with Jeff Bridges, the 2005 version from Peter Jackson, and the 2017 Kong Skull Island, which is kind of a reboot of Kong, remake, reboot. I don't know what to call it, but it's a main entry in the series. It's the first of a series. So here's the thing about King Kong. Anybody who wants to make a King Kong movie, you can't. Stop trying. Unless the year is 1932. I'm actually going to have to look this up now because now I'm actually really bothered by the fact that I forgot what year this actually came out. I'm going to have to look this up. 33. Right. I was completely 33. So unless the year
notes, Paul?
Unless the year is 1933, I had to check Wikipedia real fast. You cannot make a good King Kong movie because the story only makes sense in the 1930s from a lot of different angles, by the way. So let's start off. For those who haven't heard of King Kong, I'm really glad that you finally joined us here on planet Earth. King Kong is a giant monkey, giant gorilla. Now, in the original King Kongs, he was 25 feet tall or so, maybe a little taller. In the 76 King Kong, he was like, I don't know, 50 feet. I mean, they made a giant mechanical King Kong that almost crushed Jessica Lange, so there's that. In 2005, he was back to being like 25 feet tall. And Kong Skull Island, he was like 105 feet tall or something like that. Insanely huge. Now,
he had to be big enough to fight Godzilla.
He did. And Godzilla is freaking massive. And that's actually another reason why they didn't need to make Kong Skull Island. They didn't need to make Kong compatible with other creatures. A little side about Kong Skull Island, because I watched it all the way through this past week, through to the very end, and there's a post-credit sequence where they welcome Brie Larson and Tom Hiddleston's characters into Monarch, this agency that looks over monsters around the world. I'm like, oh, it's a shared
Right.
universe thing because everything's a shared universe now because Marvel did it and they made billions of dollars, and now we have to do it with King Kong for some reason.
You know
I
how
don't
I
know.
feel about that nonsense.
At least Universal gave up.
Yeah, Universe with their dark universe or whatever it was,
Yeah.
they made the Mummy and realized, oh, we gave Tom Cruise too much power. This is not good at all.
Yeah.
And for some reason, we had Dr. Jekyll in there with fat Australian Santa Claus himself, Russell Crowe. Anyway, King Kong, 1933. Perfect movie. I adore this movie. I watched this movie a bunch when I was a kid. Now, here's why King Kong only works in the 1930s. Because there were still dark parts on the map. Yes, we had the world pretty much mapped out by that point, but you still could conceivably have, in the 1930s, weird remote islands with strange creatures. I mean, now we get that, no, there's not going to be a Loch Ness monster. We understand that. We can take images of Lake Loch Ness and know that there's not a plesiosaur that somehow lived for 65 million years. But in the 1930s, these kinds of things were still plausible. You had weird competing theories, even up to that point, about Hollow Earth, about Neptunism versus volcanism for how the Earth actually moved the tectonic plates. And you had all these weird competing theories that were really fun and interesting and compelling that all seemed plausible. Most of them had kind of disappeared by the early 20th century, but by the 1930s, a lot of stuff was still hanging on. And the idea that there were prehistoric creatures still alive somewhere was a possibility.
Mhm.
So that there's this remote island where there's this gigantic ape and dinosaurs and 200-foot long snakes, crazy stuff, was still a possibility. And so you can play on that because this was a point where man was feeling dominant over nature. The whole thing about King Kong is dominance over nature because there's no politicization. When you get to the 1976 King Kong, the whole thing is about this company going to find oil on this island. And then they find out that the oil is no good. They can't use it. So Charles Grodin's character is like, well, we got to bring back something. Let's bring back this giant ape, which I'm like, that should have been like part of your plan from the moment you saw a 25, 50-foot tall ape that really has the hots for Jessica Lange. That should be like high priority.
But
no, yes, the oil.
Fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. And then you get to the 2005 King Kong. And the problem is that with the 2005 King Kong, it's very much trying to be the 1933 King Kong all over again. And it really was. Plus, it's 3 hours long, and it could have been 2 hours long.
Yeah, that one actually takes place in the 30s, correct?
Yeah, it is literally a remake of the original. Like the 1976 version, there's no Carl Denham, there's no actress. Jessica Lange is a survivor on the lifeboat and everything.
And I will say, like, I like Peter Jackson's Kong. Like, I get where you're coming from, that it could have been shorter. Like, I think as far as a remake, it's probably as close as they could get.
I like 3/4 of the 2005 King Kong. All the subplot with the captain and the first mate just needs to disappear. You can edit that out, leave it on the cutting room floor.
First third of the movie, like,
no one will care. Why are we focusing on these two? They don't matter to this plot at all. You're just chucking characters at the screen, hoping one of them is going to stick, which is what King Kong does later when he goes through a rampage, by the way. Now,
I'm just imagining like people's faces hitting the camera and just sliding down.
The problem is
movies, guys.
The problem with the 2005 King Kong is also that they're showing all these dinosaurs and giant spiders. And Cracked had a really good video a while ago about this, where Carl Denham goes into the office of the theater owner near the end of the movie and says, "Hey there, sir, I've got quite the show for you. I've got this 25-foot ape." He's like, "That's incredible. So what does he do?" "What do you mean?" "Well, the ape, like, does he do anything? Does he, like, do tricks, or does he, like, juggle or sing or something?" Like, "No, he's just a gigantic ape." So it says here in your form, you want to book the theater for 2 hours a night for a month. What is he going to do for 2 hours? He's huge. Look at him. I mean, look, we had to fight through dinosaurs, and you found dinosaurs? Did you bring any of those back? No. So you went past all the dinosaurs and extinct animals that we didn't know still existed and found a bigger version of a thing we've already got. And you want people to pay $200 in today's money, 1933, to look at an ape that's going to do nothing. Yep. Sold.
100%. I'm sold.
100%. Absolutely. And the thing is, though, the great thing about movie from the 1930s is that you can buy into these conceits much more easily because they're being made for an audience that just wants to be entertained.
Yeah.
We don't want to be entertained anymore. I'm sorry to say. We want to go to a movie to pick it apart.
If that were true, you know, this podcast wouldn't exist.
It wouldn't
We'd just
exist.
being entertained. Yeah.
Exactly.
But look at even the pretext that you're using from the movie itself. Like, that was a time when you still had the kind of the freak show and the wonders of the world and the things like that, where like literally like people just wanted to see things.
You could go in and look at it. I didn't have, now you have YouTube. Like, who cares about a gigantic ape? Like, I can see somebody on TikTok dancing in an ape costume right now, juggling and on a unicycle. It doesn't matter. And the thing is about the 1930s, you still have this sense of wonder about the world. You still have this, it's conquering nature. It's about harnessing nature and the dangers of like man's hubris. The thing was, the movie is still about man's hubris. It's not about the fact that this giant ape is loose. It's about the fact that Carl Denham brought the ape
back. It's about him
that he
bringing
brought
it back. That's it.
It's about man's mistakes. And that's the thing about that story.
It's like in The Simpsons when Chief Wiggum was like, come check out the amazing jackalope. It's got the head of a rabbit, and the body of a rabbit.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it. You had the mermaid, the P.T. Barnum mermaid that was like the monkey sewn onto a fish tail or whatever. And you could get people with these kinds of things. You could get people to just see spectacle and just enjoy it. And the movie works because even though it has limited technology in making the movie, whereas done with incredible stop motion. And it's funny, the animator talked about, because you could see like the thumbprints and the hair like moving as the thing moving. He said, oh, it's just mad. The hair is bristling. And people were like, oh yeah, okay, that makes perfect sense. And you see like when Fay Ray is up on the top of the building, like you can see when it goes from being a model to being like this green screen square of this, like where it's obviously a different color around her. And but the thing is that's what you're able to do, and so you buy into that because it is a very theatrical movie. The whole movie is you watch that movie and it's like watching a play with these long static shots of people just standing there talking like this. We need to go to the island to film this movie. We should get a broad to come with us. Like, that's how they talked. And there's the dumb stereotypical captain who comes along with them, like, stand back here, madam, while I shoot at the ape with my pistol. Like, those are the characters that are in the movie. And the whole thing is hokey and dumb and very much of its era. And you buy into this idea that, yes, there's this 25-foot tall ape, and you have incredibly racist caricatures of black people on the island who are the only minorities in that movie, by the way, because it was made in the 30s, and those black actors are like, we need paychecks. I know we're kind of representing horribleness here. And you watch it and you kind of cringe a little bit. Like, it's the 1930s. Another reason why you can't update that movie is because that sensibility goes away. When you go to the 1976 version, we've had the Civil Rights Act. When you go to the island and you have these islanders and they're just black people, and you're like, holy crap, is this movie just spectacularly racist? I think that it kind of is. You have a bunch of black people on an island worshiping a giant monkey. This is the most racist thing I can think of. And then you get to the 2005 version, you're like, maybe we should just make them look like zombies? cover them in mud and makeup, and man, you don't know where they're from. And then you get to the 2017 Kong Skull Island, and they're like just I
They're
don't know,
lizards.
giant lizards kind of things that they all worship.
And I think of the reincarnations of this movie, like I do to some degree, I agree with you, but I think of the reincarnations of the movie, I think the 2005 Peter Jackson is probably the best of them, simply because like it did pay attention to the source material. It did set
Right.
the 1930s. They were cognizant of what it was, and they updated things that you can't do today in ways that you can do them.
But the thing is, though, to me, with the 2005 movie, is like I feel like I go into it knowing too much. Like this is being made now, and thinking about the kind of naivete of the culture that surrounded the original movie. When I see the 2005 version, I'm like, you're trying to capture this era that is uncapturable now. Like you can't capture a 1930s mindset. You can't have this dumb ditzy lady who is the actress who just needs these men to save her, because it's like, okay, why would you do that now? Why would you make that now? I know you're making this as a picture of the 1930s, but you can't really do it accurately. You can't picture the 1930s accurately.
So I'm gonna bring up, this is gonna come back when I talk about my thing, but I'm gonna bring up why there's a purpose to remaking things sometimes, if it is well considered. And I think the difference between a successful remake and an unsuccessful remake is how well did you A, consider that purpose, and B, how faithful were you to the source material. Those kind of, I've thought we've spent a couple of weeks talking about this topic. We've actually had a version of this conversation before. But the thing is that, like, I think that's what it comes down to upon thinking on it for a couple weeks. And I will give credit to the 2005 version, because that was the version of King Kong that I was introduced to.
Right.
I watched growing up as a teenager, like that, it came out, and that's the version that I watched. I didn't watch the 1930s version. But the thing with it is, remakes are important in a certain context. They are important for reintroducing new eras and generations to a thing that may not be able or willing to go back and see the original. We do have loss of certain properties, and like that's not the case with Kong. But the thing is, how do you introduce that in a way that it's relevant to a modern era? And as far as if we take 2005 and we take Skull Island, which version of reintroducing that property would you rather see?
Well,
I'd rather see 2005.
This is the thing. I think that the 2017 Kong Skull Island is not great of a movie as it is, and it has structural problems. Like, okay, the 2005 I think has structural problems of length, as well as the fact that a lot of the stuff that happens on the island looks like PS3 cutscenes, where this giant spiders.
Real CGI happy in that movie.
They got really CGI happy, and way more than they should have. It made me pine for the old claymation from the 1930s.
CGI, I think, this is going to be very controversial to say, I think
Right.
CGI is probably the worst thing to happen to film. It's so blatantly inappropriately used. And when I say inappropriately, I say that because it ages terribly.
Yes.
Depending on when you did it, it doesn't matter. It ages terribly. The only films that I've seen do it well are like Jurassic Park and Dragonheart, which are two of the first films that ever used it.
Minority Report did a good job too. They did a good job with the little creepy crawly things that were like the cameras. They really worked hard at making those move realistically.
Minimal,
but it's just a small part of the movie. Exactly. When you have all the CGI, even people are just like, let's just do everything CGI. Then you end up with Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, and nobody wants that.
And you also end up with the final fight in the Black Panther movie, and he's down fighting in the trains, and it's like, it just looks like I'm watching a video game right now. This movie was so amazing up until this point,
So I want to take an interesting point on that. Like, and this is probably gonna come up again for me later because I've been thinking a lot about this in relation. But look at Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings versus The Hobbit. Yeah, I love Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. I think it's a beautiful version of that story for anybody who does not want to slog through Tolkien's book, because it is a dry read. I've read it. It's not for everyone. The movies are beautiful. I love them, you know, but you look at the care that went into the recreation of that versus what we got with The Hobbit. And there's a lot that went into it. I can have a whole night on that, but The Hobbit looks like a video game. Like let's just throw CGI at the screen and see what sticks, and it's gonna age poorly for it. It showed when it was made.
Let's do this 15-minute long scene of them going down on CGI barrels through a CGI river, you know?
That wasn't in the book to this character who wasn't in the book. Is like,
Yeah.
I don't
Wasn't
know.
even in the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
The scene, I believe, was in the book.
Yeah. We just have to have.
But the thing is, I think there's, and this is going to come back, there's a certain amount of care that you have to take when you're working from source material that exists and that has a following. This is going to play back in later. But I will say in this particular case, I think that's probably the closest you're going to get to a good remake of Kong. I totally see your point for the original.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Like, when you tried to update Kong, it felt strange. Like, you get to the 1976 Kong, and it is all about, you know, it comes out in the gas crisis in the 1970s, and it's all about environmental concerns. You get to the 2000. The problem is when you make the Kong in 2005, you don't have the culture that you're releasing the movie in. We have this idea about how we fit into nature and how we're not just dominant over it. We have had the intervening 80 years between the first King Kong and then the 2005 King Kong, where we realize, oh crap, we actually are destroying our planet and have the capability of doing so, and we're supposed to be caring for it rather than just dominating it. And our role with nature, as we as an audience go in to see the movie, has thoroughly changed. And we can watch with that lens of a thing that was made in an era when that mentality didn't exist and still enjoy it and still say, yes, this is a window back to something that was in time. One of the best things I've seen in a long time was the introduction that Whoopi Goldberg did on one of the Looney Tunes collections. I think it was like collection 4 or something. Saying,
yeah, we've talked about this before.
We have.
Yeah.
Because it was a great thing, because she says, look, yes, you're going to see racist depictions and stereotypes in these cartoons, but we can't pretend this didn't exist, and we want to document these things so that the future will know what was made. And it's a really good way of looking at entertainment from the past, that you can view it from the lens of a viewer now and get yourself in the headspace of somebody at the time and view things almost dispassionately.
Here's something I fully agree with in what you're saying is you have the 2005 Kong, you have the original 1930s Kong. The 2005 Kong would have never existed as an original IP.
Yeah, it couldn't.
You couldn't have done it.
You couldn't have done it. Now
the only reason it does exist is because we had the reference back to the 1930s.
And it's obvious when you watch the movie that Peter Jackson loves King Kong. It is one of his favorite movies, and he really wanted to do a good homage to it. But the problem with taking a story that is so entrenched in its time and either making a movie set in that time or modernizing it is that you run the risk of, either way you go, destroying what's fundamentally interesting or possible about that character. It would be like making a movie now about the Loch Ness Monster and finding the Loch Ness Monster. Well, it'd be a ridiculous thing. But if you made that movie in 1977, well, okay, all right, maybe. And if you make it now set in 1977, like, I guess maybe I could buy this a little bit, but you're trying to force me back into a mentality that doesn't exist anymore.
What's up, Jeremy?
The episode of The Simpsons where Mr. Burns goes to find Nessie is phenomenal.
Everything's just The Simpsons.
Yes. When you make it a comedy, you can get away with just about anything. But this all brings me to the 2017 Kong Skull Island. I think the idea might have been solid because they do address, yes, what we've known about the Earth, has been wrong. It actually is the old hollow earth theory from the 1800s is actually correct. And yes, there are these monsters that we have yet to discover. We went to this island and we found this gigantic ape. The problem is what we know now as an audience. The movie is set in the 1970s. So there are a couple of issues with this. Number one, we know that a King Kong that's 110 feet tall or 105 or whatever he is in Kong Skull Island couldn't exist. We know this. The monster, and I'm willing to put aside a lot for movies, but when you're trying to make a movie that's so much about the politics of the era, it takes place during the Vietnam War. They deal with Vietnam War era mentality and politics and the geopolitical problems that we're facing at the time. And they try to deal with the man versus nature, saying that we can't kill Kong. He's actually trying to protect this island. He's actually trying to protect the people from these monsters that live underground. And you take all these things and you're trying to make this matter and make sense, and you're trying to ground it, but then you have this creature that couldn't physically exist, that would under its own weight crumble, because you can't have a creature that large and survive in Earth's gravity. It just isn't going to happen. It's not going to work. Plus, go ahead.
Even if you did, it's like the way bone structure works now we know is, hey, when we have huge animals, one, they move really slow because of metabolism purposes. Right. Then another thing is the bone density of bones from the legs is really dense. Mm-hmm. The higher you go up, the less dense bone density becomes. Therefore, it wouldn't be able to fight anything with its fists. It would break.
Yeah. This is the problem. This is the problem of bone, is that, as you get heavier, you have the proportion is like 40%. It has to be like 40% weight to strength ratio or something like that. And that's why elephant bones are, they're way thicker than you think they would need to be. And so as you get to a creature of Kong size at 100 some odd feet tall, it can't stand on its own weight. I'm willing to forgive a lot of things for a movie. The thing is that it's something that's always in the back of my mind as the picking apart of the movie. And Kong Skull Island also has structural problems. Like, they show Kong in like the first 2 minutes of the movie, which if you're doing a monster movie, you don't do that. The whole point is the reveal. You wait. The great thing about the first King Kong is that they don't even know about this monster. This is not even a thing. They just happen upon this island, and they're like, "What are all these natives doing? They kidnap the woman off the boat. Like, what's going on here?" And then they can make her part of a ritual, and they're like, "What's going on?" And then you see this 25-foot tall ape come out of the woods, and you're like, "Holy crap! What the heck is that?" That's what a good monster reveal movie does. That's why with the movie, like, you take the movie Predator, and then you have the Predator 2. Mm-hmm. The Predator, which is a perfect horror movie, and it is a horror movie. It is brilliant. You don't see the Predator for like the first hour of the movie. In fact, the first 30 minutes of the movie, you don't even think that there's going to... If you didn't know what the movie was, you think you were just watching a generic action movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger that's taking place in the jungle, until you see the weird heat vision and you're like, what am I looking at here? And then people start dying mysteriously. And then you start realizing that, oh, there's this weird, creepy alien that's been killing people out in the wilderness. And you get this whole buildup of this mystery of what is this? That's why the movie Alien is also so great, because you get this weird, creepy facehugger thing, and you think that's the alien. And then, oh no, it's the thing that pops out of John Hurt's chest. Crap, well, now I have this little alien running around. Oh, no, it grows incredibly quickly. So now you have this gigantic alien. Like, the whole buildup of mystery. In Kong Skull Island, literally, there's this World War II pilots, this American pilot and this Japanese pilot, they crash land on the island, and then you see Kong just like reach up over a cliff and like grab one of them. Like, oh, there he is, right here in the first minute of the movie. Like, and the thing is, you can't get away with saying, oh, but we all know what Kong looks like. Well, listen, you made him 100 some odd feet tall in this one. You're trying to make him bigger and scarier. Wait for the reveal. Like, let it build up. Maybe there should be some legend about it or something like that. But the movie tries to be more politicized and tries to be more like trying to understand, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't be like, yes, we understand the natural world and we're trying to make sure that we understand our role in it. But this movie also features giant skull lizards and an ape that couldn't possibly exist. Like, okay, I don't think you can juggle both of those balls at the same time. I don't think you can say we're very grounded in reality. By the way, the earth is hollow. Like, that's not how
Right.
things
Absolutely.
work. But you can get away with that in the 1930s movie. You can get away with that with the way that people looked at the world at the time, the way that people looked at movies and entertainment at the time. It's just a dumb ape movie that comes off like a play.
That's also kind of why Godzilla can still work today. And King Kong just doesn't, because Godzilla comes from the water. And there's areas in the water we just don't know about. Like
we have no idea.
Trench,
yeah, you
like
still have unknowns.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying you still have unknowns when you're talking about the ocean that are legitimately
mysterious. Like, who knows what's down there? And the thing about great thing about Godzilla is it's also still a metaphor for nuclear war, which obviously still has pertinence today. So Godzilla properties go nuts, and that's
or
fascinating.
even
Plus,
like if you watch the more recent Godzilla movie, it also pulled in nuclear power, and it's kind of like had the disaster in Japan that took place as clear inspiration to it as well.
Oh yeah, the whole thing is a metaphor for the atom bomb. I mean, that's what Godzilla comes from. The thing about Godzilla is that I buy it because not only comes from the water, also a metaphor for nuclear war, but also like when you start dealing with stuff from outer space, there's a possibility as well. Like you watch the new Godzilla kind of movie series, whatever it is on Netflix, the CG one that's made in Japan, that's really good, by the way. They deal a lot with, did it come from outer space? Is it alien? And I'm like, well, cool. I'm on board with that. Where there is mystery, I'll buy the conceit. But where there are knowns and what we understand and where our role is in the world, and you start trying to like say, no, let's make something that's from this mentality that was like 80 years ago. I'm like, you're not going to be able to, because you're not going to go all in, because you won't be able to go all in. You can't make and you shouldn't make the more racist parts of the 1930s King Kong. You should not. You shouldn't have dumb one-dimensional characters, with Carl Denham, he's the cheat. You have the ship captain, he's the brave guy. And you have the ditzy woman that needs to be saved. Like everybody's one-dimensional characters. You can't have those kinds of things anymore and make that palatable to a modern audience. See what?
You say, Jeremy?
Can't even do that with Bond anymore.
You can't even do that with Bond. You have to have a complex Bond. And the thing is,
taking the character complexities out of it, I think you can take some liberties. It depends on how good the filmmaker is at making you suspend disbelief as far as mystery goes. If a creator is doing their job, the setup of the world should suspend your disbelief.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that we won't have a conversation about it afterwards if we've thought about it too long.
Right.
But upon a first viewing, does it suspend your disbelief? That's the test. The test to me is always upon a first viewing. Like, was it entertaining and did I buy into it?
Right. It's like The Dark Knight. Like the Joker would not be able to actually plan all of these incredible plans. He says like, oh, I just do things that come to me naturally. Like, well, you somehow snuck the guy into the jail with the bomb in his stomach and set up the
Dark Knight. Like, that's a great movie. Leave it alone.
It's a great movie. But here's
many things that don't make sense.
What's great about it is that it makes you forget about the things that just don't make sense. They
don't try to answer that either.
No,
they just leave it a mystery to you.
Exactly. And
but the beauty of it is they set up a world in which you're not worried about it.
Yeah.
That was the difference. That was the difference for me in The Dark Knight compared to like Skyfall, where the villain was able to do this great escape sequence. I didn't believe any of the Skyfall escape sequence, but I believe the entirety of the Joker escape sequence.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though they both don't make sense, they rely on things.
Amazing to watch. Like,
both of them rely on things completely out of the control of the villain. Like he can't control when the train's going to go by, and
Exactly.
you can't control if Commissioner Gordon comes back from the dead. Like you don't know these things. So, but you still buy it at the moment. The problem with King Kong is that I don't buy it anymore, and that's when I see it. Is Kong Skull Island fun from just a big monster movie spectacle kind of thing? I guess it's kind of neat watching him step on Samuel L. Jackson. I guess like like the problem is also that with Kong Skull Island as a movie, not just as a Kong movie, it's a problematic movie. Like there's this part where they're trying to go rescue one of their comrades, and like we don't leave anybody behind, and they lose like 5 guys going to rescue this one dude who ends up being dead anyway. I'm like, you don't do math very well. Like, what should we do? Should we go? Hey, here's this guy who's a American pilot who's been trapped in this island for like 30 years, who's the only good character in this whole movie that's really fantastic, played by John C. Reilly, and he's saying we shouldn't go this way. No, we should totally go this way and go try to find this guy, even though we know we're going to lose like half the men looking for one dude. This is not Saving Private Ryan. Leave the guy and save your keisters and get out of there. But the whole thing was about Samuel L. Jackson, and he was the stereotypical American general who's like all crazy for war and was sad the war was ending and wanted to go kill King Kong, even though he wasn't listening to John C. Reilly saying, no, you need to leave King Kong alone. It's like, no, we're going to go kill the giant ape. And I'm like, okay, how many more are you going to die before this ends? Oh, we're going to get to watch King Kong throw it. It's kind of cool watching King Kong throw a helicopter. Like, I'm not going to lie. It's fun to watch. Like, but it is like playing a video game.
It's like
kind of dumb.
Me and Psych. It's kind of fun to watch. Oh, here's an admission. Okay. I've continued watching Psych since this on its own. So.
We broke him.
We did. All right. One more note on Kong Skull Island before I move on, because I think I made my point about why you can't do a Kong movie anymore, and the only good one that can possibly exist was the one made in the 1930s. The one that makes sense. I will say, look, there are problems with the ones from the 1930s, but it's the only one that makes sense in its time and its context. I watched Kong Skull Island all the way through, past the credits, and there was a post-credit sequence where they show Tom Hiddleston and Brie Larson sharing some obvious banter that's meant for the audience and would never be uttered by human beings, which is most of the movie anyway, which is most movies these days because everything is uttered for the trailer.
Oh, God.
But we find out that, that somebody literally says, welcome to Monarch, because now they're part of this monster hunting group and like obviously setting up more movies where obviously they're going to bring in Godzilla and other movie monsters. Like it's a shared universe. And look, I don't have anything against shared universes. It's just that there's only one that did it well. And every other one doesn't understand why that one did it well.
It's true. And what's funny is the one that did it well didn't do it well at first either. So.
No, it didn't. And it had problems and missteps.
Yep. They should have learned the lessons, but it's like, oh, look at all that moolah.
But you look at what the box office returns were for the early Marvel movies, and they didn't make that much money. I mean, we're talking like Captain America, I think, made like $300 million on a $150 million budget. It's only as they just kept making them, and Kevin Feige's like, no, we're going to keep doing things my way.
Keep running at this.
Just keep going.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, I will forgive Marvel. I hate shared universe nonsense for the most part. I don't like it. But I will say this for Marvel. I believe the source material did all take place in basically one universe.
Well, it did. I mean, it's yeah.
Like, I was limited in my comic book Marvel exposure. Like, I grew up watching X-Men, reading a little of the comics.
Right.
Like, I believe there was some crossover anyway, so it made sense to do it with the movies. I'm real over it now. Like, they've run it into the ground for me.
Well, most of it is based on actual comics. Like, most of what happened.
It's based on the comics, which I will forgive you for, because it's based on the source material.
Except for the Mandarin, which I will forever like. Shane Black he can be a fun filmmaker. Like he wrote Lethal Weapon, he wrote Predator, and he directed Iron Man 3. What he did with the Mandarin and making Ben Kingsley basically the Mickey Mouse, as correct put it, of this organization, and he was just an actor.
Figurehead, yeah.
He was a real serious villain in the Marvel comics. Like he was somebody to take seriously, and now he's just a throwaway joke. Would make Ben Kingsley this actor, and that was very frustrating to me. Like I didn't like that. I liked Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
I
But
didn't.
I thought, no, I don't blame you. But I like watching Guy Pearce be evil. I guess
I like watching Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. Like that's
everybody does.
that's the only thing I care about in the Iron Man universe. Like that's I don't care about any of the content.
You look at his IMDb page, and like it's almost all Marvel over the last 15 years,
and I love it. Like,
here's my big until you got Dr. Dolittle this year. That was awful. But that's gonna win an Oscar this year, I bet. That and Sonic, they're gonna sweep the Oscars. All right.
Okay.
Anyway.
So there's my list of complaints about the various Kong movies and why the original one is the only one that makes sense in its context, and why you can't do a good Kong movie anymore because we just know too dang much.
Mm-hmm.
And these audiences, we're not just looking for brainless entertainment. We want to analyze things to the nth degree. And Kong is something that invites such analysis. Unlike the Transformers, which is still that just go and watch and turn your brain off kind of entertainment, apparently. They keep making them.
I think they've kind of stopped now. It's been a while since the last night.
Don't give them ideas.
No, there was the Bumblebee movie that just came out like last year.
Oh, yeah. They got a good director for that, too. It was the Kubo and the Two Strings guy.
A movie which should have made more than $75 million.
Right. Like a decent movie.
Everybody loved it. That was universal critical acclaim. But it can't crest $100 million.
That should have won Best Animated Film, too. But guess what did win? What? Finding Dory.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's like, do you know what good animation is?
Entertainment consumers.
Oh, the 2009 Academy Awards were the most frustrating.
Why are you still watching?
Okay.
Why are you still watching?
2009 is 11 years ago, back when I still cared. The 2009 animated Best Animation animated feature. You had Secret of the Kells.
It was good.
And Fantastic Mr. Fox, Coraline, and then, of course, The Princess and the Frog. Guess which one?
Oh.
Princess and the Frog.
Shocked?
Not at all. Even though either Coraline or Fantastic Mr. Fox won.
Or Secret of the Kells, which is also amazing.
I never saw that one, so
it's really pretty.
It's one of the most gorgeous animated things I have ever seen. I'm an animation nut, and the story is it's okay, but to look at,
really beautiful.
It's like Avatar for people who like cell animation. It's like this is the most amazing looking thing, but I'm not going to pay attention to any of the things that the people are saying or what's going to happen in the story. But I'm going to look at every second of this. That's what Secret of the Kells was for me.
Nice. That's awesome.
I'll have those movies.
And every one of those animators, every one of those people made speeches specifically for the Academy Awards for the character. Like you had Fantastic Mr. Fox like giving an acceptance speech and like saying thank you for nominating me, and Coraline did one as well. Like it was amazing. And freaking because I knew the second I saw Princess and the Frog, like of course they're going to give it to Princess and the Frog, even though it's not as good of a movie as Fantastic Mr. Fox or Coraline. Coraline's the one people still talk about. Nobody cares about Princess and the Frog anymore. Damn it, this is getting me worked up.
I love Coraline.
Hey,
It's
here's
amazing.
a new topic.
It's amazing.
What is the worst movie to ever win an Academy Award?
Oh, don't know.
To win an Academy, there was a movie on Mystery Science Theater 3000. It was during the Joel era, and it was an Academy Award winner.
Okay.
Had Gene Hackman in it.
It has to be an important Academy Award, not just like special effects. That would be a good topic.
Worst Best Picture winner. We'll do that at some point.
Okay.
Or Best Animation.
I hate to do this, but before we move on, can we take a break?
Of course we can. Now, go to your lobby, get yourself some popcorn, grab a beer, enjoy your time before you come back and listen to us yak some more about properties that shouldn't have or should have been remade. You don't know.
Yay!
I'm going to get a beer. Okay, so Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. We all know, you guys know that there was a book called On Stranger Tides from the early 80s that the movie is based on. Like,
I didn't know.
On Stranger Tides was like the inspiration for everything that is like the Monkey Island series, the original Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And then somebody said, hey, why don't we just take this book that inspired everything and shove Jack Sparrow into it? And they did. How the hell? That would be like if they took The Grapes of Wrath and said, you know what? We're putting the Terminator in it. It's now a Terminator movie. Now all those scenes where you have, I don't know if we're going to be able to survive this, Pa. Hasta la vista, baby. It makes every bit as much sense as what happened to On Stranger Tides.
Well, at least Jack Sparrow is a pirate.
At least Jack Sparrow is a pirate.
At least Jack Sparrow is a pirate. Okay.
He needed to fit into the world.
So put John Wayne as the main character because he doesn't have the subtlety to act
right
in that way.
Right, you just get a cartoon. It's basically what you get. And like, I hadn't read the book, and I didn't know this. And my brother Lee went and saw the movie, and with a friend who like was a huge fan of the book On Stranger Tides and the whole series, because the guy who wrote it, he does all this historical fiction, and he tries to look for like in history where there's a hole where he could fit a story into.
So,
like,
yeah,
I know.
Which I have.
I was wondering how it was like, because for how not good the stories typically are in the Pirates movies, the lore in those movies is some of the best lore I've ever seen. And I just I want to see a whole fleshed out world, like open world video game or something like that, where I can play in it.
Well,
it really is.
It was funny. My brother was saying, like he went to the movie with his friend, and his friend kept saying, like, yeah, I remember that scene in the book, and now for some reason Jack Sparrow's standing there. Like, that's what happened. But yeah, I mean that's why, because it's based on, like, that's why it makes such an amazing world to be in, because it's based on these things that are other and outside of it. You know, the whole Davy Jones history.
God, like I just love the way they were able to bring it. Then, oh my gosh, the organ playing from
Bill Nye playing with his beard, like
yeah.
God,
I love the lore, even the Pieces of Eight stuff. You know, like I had to replace it, or else I'm gonna remain undead for forever. Like that the whole universe.
I can't hate the Pirates movies. They are fun to watch.
they are.
They're entertaining.
Mm-hmm. I'd watch the next one.
I probably would too. I hate to say it, but they're the exact kind of popcorn crunching movie that I want. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I am willing to suspend my disbelief for this shit.
Yeah, it's not a great story.
Yes.
It's fun.
Jack Sparrow is a very fun character. And if they could get a better cast around him, like that's what made the early ones so fantastic, is before they even got the lore established, you had amazing characters to back everyone up. Like,
right.
And I think they
Keira Knightley was amazing. Orlando Bloom was amazing. Jack Sparrow was a fantastic character that was just fun to watch. Now, later on, it's slowed down. It wasn't, you didn't get the characters that you wanted to root for as much. You know,
I think Keira and Orlando's characters lost their appeal as time went on. I love Joffrey Rush. Like, I got, like, I don't know, Captain Barbossa was like, he is one of the most fun characters to follow for me. I don't know what it is.
Oh, I love Captain Barbossa. That was the one I was trying to think of that I forgot.
He was great. He's wonderful. Like,
then Jack's father. Who played Jack's father?
Keith Richards.
Oh, God.
Keith Richards. He was so good as...
And then Paul McCartney was in a later one too.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about the later Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Once you move past the arc with Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley, it's like when they try to build a radio show around the sidekick co-host.
Mhm.
Like you have Steve and Bugster, and they try to make a show about Bugster, and you're like, he can't
Yes.
carry this. He's not going to do a good job.
Jack is a side character. He needs to stay a side character.
That's
For
what's
sure.
great about him.
That it very rarely works. That's why most spin-offs of TV shows, like Joey, for example, and Joni Loves Chachi, suck.
Planet
You know?
Sheen.
Planet Sheen, another great one. But occasionally it works. The Jeffersons, considerably better than All in the Family.
Family Matters. Did you know Family Matters was a
I
spin-off?
forgot Family Matters was a spin-off.
From
but yeah,
Perfect
that's
Strangers.
Yeah.
so much better than Perfect Strangers.
I liked Perfect Strangers, but come on. Urkel.
Yeah. Did I do that?
Generation of people that would say that.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
All right.
Anyway, sorry.
Anyways, we have some remakes to get to. Now, the question is, knowing how conversation went last time,
Okay.
do you want to get it out of the way, Sydney? We can kind of
I kind of do.
rip it off like a Band-Aid.
I kind of do. I've got a more concise take on it.
That's fair.
All
What's
right.
what is your example for this week?
So my example this week is unfortunately Final Fantasy VII and the recent Final Fantasy VII remake. So I'm gonna admit I'm gonna flash back to an episode where I was talking about Final Fantasy VII and all the reasons you couldn't make it in its former form today. And when I went back and watched that episode, unfortunately, you can link to it, Paul.
I should put a link on the screen.
When I went back and watched that episode, I was like, "Oh, you were so naive and optimistical." So I was.
So it looks like you did not care for this.
I did not. We've already had some pre-discussions about this, but without I'm going to try and not get too deep in the weeds on this because I could do that for 2 weeks, and I have with some unfortunate friends who've been at the root of having to listen to me.
Discuss pop culture? Oh, twist my arm.
I mean, well, like this it's been an ongoing discussion. But to get to the root of it, I played the remake. I played it in the first week it came out. I did not get spoilered. Jeremy was discussing some spoiler alert issues with us earlier, and he specifically asked the question in terms of certain things, are you glad you weren't spoiled? And I will say I'm glad I wasn't, because I don't think I would have gotten the limited enjoyment that I did out of the game. This is a property that's very near and dear to my heart. I played it something like 20 years ago originally, and I played it several times since. And I was one of the people that was clamoring for a remake, and I've got to say, upon seeing them remake it, I wish they'd have left well enough alone. I really do. And this is thematically, I'm going to stick to 2 points here. And I mentioned them, both of them earlier. And that's, if you're going to do a remake of something, there needs to be 2 intentions that are very in place. And one is respect for the source material, and the other is, why are you remaking it? I think the reason we wanted this game remade, and I'm not going to go into like giving a synopsis of the game, it would take entirely too long. If you want to go look, it's on Wikipedia, like go look it up.
Worth it, by the way.
It is. It's a very worthwhile game to play. Thematically, it's a beautiful property. And I think that's a lot of my problem with what they did when they remade it. If you follow this game at all, you're aware that they did a very controversial new ending. That basically took us into either a metaverse or a alternate universe, alternate timeline kind of dialogue that has now been opened up. And it sort of, in a property like this, it sort of opens up Pandora's box. I'll come back to that in a minute. But what I want to say about respecting your source material, I really honestly don't feel like they did. Number one, I don't feel like the source material was respected. And I'll elaborate on that in just a second. But also, why are you remaking it? We had fans for going on 15 years clamoring for a remake of this game. The specific reason being that back in whatever year the PlayStation 3 was released, years that I should have looked up before this.
05.
05. Thank you, Paul. That's why we're on the show with you.
I remember dates.
But back in 05, when they were going to release the PlayStation 3, they showed a tech demo to show the capabilities of the PlayStation 3 graphically. What they used for the tech demo was the opening from Final Fantasy VII rebuilt with PlayStation 3 graphics. The fans saw this. We saw they're making a remake. They said, no, we're not making a remake. We all clamored for a remake for the next 15 years. We got a bunch of spin-off properties, good, bad, and indifferent. And continued until a few years ago when they finally announced they were going to do a remake. This went through a lot of, development changes and things like that, and we all followed it. And unfortunately, if you want to flash back to the former episode, this looked really positive. They looked like they were going to be very faithful to the original story. They looked like they were trying to give the fans what they want. What you find out basically in the last hour and a half of the game is that no, they've opened Pandora's box by creating this meta universe question, basically. It's really not questionable. It's there. It's not even obtuse. It's one of the most ham-fisted metaphors I've ever seen for designers basically not wanting to make the game that we wanted. It's very blatant. And it's going back to, we've gotten a lot of material from this out of clamoring for this remake. We've gotten a lot of additional material, but it was all material that made sense in the universe. And whether it was faithful to the original or not, it all made sense within the realms of that world, whereas this does not. And the thing that I really want to hit on with this being a remake that I wish had not been made, is that if you're going to, how much damage can be done with reopening a property that has a legacy like this? Because to a lot of people who are fans of this game, this is a very meaningful and important game, story-wise and thematically, and there's a lot of things that now are disrupted by the direction they decided to take. Paul and I have had a discussion about this. Jeremy and I have had discussions about this. But that's a direction you cannot take now because you've given knowledge to the characters that they should not have had. And that's my big issue with it. It's not any persnicketyness over what individual things happened versus did not happen. It's when you open a world up to no longer operating within its own universe, all bets are off, and now you can kind of do whatever you want. And the game basically ends with the developer saying, hey, we can do whatever we want now. And apparently they're real happy about that. I would have preferred that you left the story alone, guys. And it's real telling.
The villain's not even Sephiroth anymore.
God, who even knows now? Like I've literally had to amputate a piece of my soul along with this game.
Ow.
That's where I am. Like I'm disappointed thoroughly. For people who enjoy it, I know people who enjoyed it. Great. I'm glad you did. Glad you don't feel like you wasted your $60 or $80 like I did. I am glad I didn't get spoiled just because of the fact that, like, had I gone in knowing, I definitely would have canceled my order.
Right.
And I wouldn't have gotten what I did. There were a few things they got right. And that's almost, it makes the knife cut worse. Because they were stunningly faithful in moments. And they were actually, some of the ways that they elaborated on the story were stunning. But overall, with the rose-colored glasses off, I think there's a lot of weaknesses. That like I said, I won't get into the weeds on it.
The director of Kingdom Hearts has weaknesses in his stories?
No, do you think?
Statement of the year right there.
I'm trying not to rag on any specific elements. And I know I'm being kind of vague. I'm trying, like I said, I could get into play and things like that. Which this is not, I don't feel like the place for. I feel like this is the place to discuss story and philosophy.
Right.
And the philosophy I want to hit on is, if you're not going to do justice to a property, why are you remaking it? So I took the liberty of spending the last week while you guys gave me some extra time, because I was very angry about this. I was very emotional. To go back and replay the first 10 hours, 8 hours, whatever they said it was, of the original game that was supposed to constitute the remake. Also, I don't appreciate the marketing nonsense that was the use of the word remake. Swear, just for the record, I don't appreciate it.
Reimagining, really.
This is so far beyond reboot that it's not even funny. Like, it's not even a reimagining of the story in any sense that any person who cared about this story would have done, I don't feel like, personally.
Well, from what you described, it almost sounds like a shell with like the same images of the characters over something else.
Over something entirely different. And if you want to make a new story within a universe, fine. Far be it from me. You've been doing it for 20 years. Like, and
In a movie.
By the way, we as fans ate it up. And fans of a lot of fandoms do that. But I feel like we as FF7 fans are a particularly tolerant fan base. We've gotten a lot of properties that are so-so. Mixed in with some good ones, mixed in with some arguably terrible ones. So, but we've taken it all, and it's all worked into this universe, and it's all remained relatively cognizant from whence it came until this. And I went back and played the original. And for all of my gripes about in the former podcast, where I probably should have focused more on this, for the clunkiness of the controls and the slow turn-based battle system, something came out of replaying it that I didn't expect. And of course, this is something that's very unique to video games, and I want to touch on this from a storytelling video game point. And it's a point that I feel like games are now abjectly failing in a lot of the time. And Paul, this is, I really do want to challenge you to play this game.
I bought it again. I bought it on Steam the other day.
Now you have it. And I actually bought the PlayStation 4 digital download because now I can just play it on my PlayStation 4 instead of booting up PS1. However, and I feel like the translation is probably a little bit better than my original copy. However, like, there's some, I completely understand why this is not your type of game, now understanding why, but I really would love to challenge you to it, and I'm going to unofficially do it now.
Well, I'm going to play it because it's one of those games that will be held up as, when we talk about like the top 5 games that convince people that video games can be art, you have like The Last of Us, you have maybe Portal 2, Half-Life, and Final Fantasy 7 is going to be in the top 5.
Well, I want you to play it on the basis that I'm challenging you to it. I want to challenge you to it in a very specific way. Okay. I think we do a really interesting conversation for the two of us. What came out of replaying this was something I completely didn't expect because I'd totally forgotten it existed. I went in knowing the story. I played this game all the way through several times in my life, at several different ages. So it's meant something different to me every time I've played it. And I started playing it again, thinking that I knew the story. And then what struck me was the way in which they told it. Because we can sit around and say, oh, well, you know, it's 36-bit sprites and like it's not. And look, credit where it's due. There are moments in the remake where it's like, oh, you did that as I imagined it in my head when I was 7. But the thing is, what's amazing is the way they managed to tell the story with the limited tech that they had. And they were limited in tech. So this was Sony's first jump, or not Sony, Square's first jump into full 3D. When they were planning on going with Nintendo on the Nintendo 64, and they ended up having a falling out with Nintendo, and they ended up over on PlayStation. They were all working from a very, like, we got to try and make this work place, is the stories that I have been told. Mm-hmm. And so what they managed to come out with, given that, is quite amazing, because the emotional span of this game and the way in which they tell the story, and by tell the story, I made the comment the other night via text to you guys that they have a way of making you feel intimately involved in the unveiling of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because everything you do tells a part of the story. You learn things by talking to non-player characters or NPCs. For those of you who are not gamers, non-player characters, that's anybody you don't control. But you learn it through talking to people in environments, and everybody has something interesting to say about something or another, whether it's a tiny bit of the lore or whether it's a clue to something you're supposed to do later. There's, I went back and played specifically this portion of the game. It did not take me 8 hours. I spent 20 hours with it. I don't even know how I managed it. I did it at a very
almost as long as the remake. Then.
Almost as long as the remake I took in this one section of the original game. And granted, like, there's probably a lot of padding where, like, I got up to go, like, turn on the dishwasher and stuff.
Right.
But I spent a legit 26 hours is my timestamp right now. But the subtleties in which they told the story, even looking at it compared to the way they redid certain things, like, there's this whole little segment that's completely optional in which, like, it rewards you for doing this optional segment. You end up talking to somebody and you accidentally find out that there's a sick person in the bathroom and you got to go get some meds. And if you take them the meds, you don't have to, but if you do, they feel better and they give you an item that helps. It's completely optional, but there's this whole little piece of storytelling that is nowhere set as a quest, or it's just you happen to talk to some people.
Right.
And if you dig through parts of this game this way, the storytelling is incredibly subtle, but you're incredibly involved in it.
That is something we are, I feel like, missing from a lot of modern gaming is it's subtlety. Gone. Everything is in your face today. Everything is told you in a very direct manner.
So what
you can't just have the characters announce their feelings. That makes me feel angry.
But specifically what Jeremy's talking about, like, I almost feel like games are like they used to put more onus on the player. So the specific area I'm talking about, when you wander into Wall Market, which is a big part of the remake. So when you wander into Wall Market in the remake, there's a cutscene that's like, here, you're talking to somebody and here's where you need to go. And, like, that doesn't happen. There is no cutscene. You gotta run around talking to people until you figure out which direction. Mm-hmm. I just realized when you get out of Midgar, which was the end of the remake, by the way, like, when you get out of Midgar, like, it tells you where to go to this first little town, and there's some story moments that are unveiled. After that, it doesn't tell you where to go.
Right.
Like, I know because I played the game 4 times, but I'm like, wait a second, they never legit told me. And it's a big world map. You can get lost. I have. Like, but, like, it puts onus on the player to, like, go forth and figure out what is going on. And I understand why, like, Paul would not immediately magnetize to that type of subtle storytelling. But I'm gonna harp on one thing specifically, which I feel like I can talk about because I feel like most people who are any degree familiar with Final Fantasy know who Sephiroth is as a villain, at least tangentially.
Right. And
this was a big part of my problem with the remake because it was a big part of what made the remake feel cheap. It was an incredibly unsatisfying game to play at the end. You felt cheated as the player. As the player, you get to the end and they introduce the main villain of the original game, which is Sephiroth, with very little context for who or what he is, other than some strange flashback scenes that didn't exist in the original, or some strange, like, Cloud has some psychological issues going on, so some strange visions, let's call them. Mm-hmm. For those of you who don't know the whole story, but most people do, for simplicity's sake. But you really have very minimal context. You don't know who this character is, other than, like, the imagery associated with him from this game, if you haven't played the original. And then you fight him. And this is a fight that, as somebody who experienced the original, felt incredibly unearned, number one. I feel like I was still in a tutorial and you just tossed me in the deep end with the big bad boss, but it's not really a big deal because you're going to help me win anyway. Whereas when you play through the initial unveiling of Sephiroth's character in the original, it's so incredibly subtle and it's beautifully done. You get hints along the way of the story of this man who's disappeared, who was a war hero, essentially, to the public. He was a public figure. Everyone knew him. He's legendary. He's the strongest in the world. And he disappeared 5 years ago. And what you're granted through conversations with different people in this world and different pieces of propaganda and things that come out is this picture of this all-powerful person who is the strongest. He's the ultimate. He can't be defeated, and no one knows what happened to him. And it's this mystery. And as they begin unveiling him as the villain, there are things that they do where you start to chase after him throughout the game, because throughout the entirety of the original game, you don't actually face him till the end. Like that's at the end of a 60 to 80 hour journey. You don't really come into contact with him until 3/4 of the way. So this is a villain that is placed through foreshadowing, and you're chasing a shadow of this man. You come across things that he does that are just superhuman feats of strength compared to what you're doing. When you see him in a flashback story, he's a million times stronger than you are. And this builds this mythos around him that is completely destroyed by the lack of subtle storytelling in this remake.
It's like how can you have a subtle villain when you come in direct contact with him? It's like like particularly when you get to defeat him. It's like there's no, it's like I've defeated you once, I can do it again. Like it almost would have been better if you would have went into that battle and the first thing that happens is he kills you and goes to credits.
And
Bam.
they do that in games. They do
Look,
that, like,
you can do that in a game.
Dice,
I would have been, look, this is
Dark Souls does that.
Dark Souls does it all the time.
Well,
But-
You're supposed to lose here.
You can actually beat. You can actually beat him.
But from a storytelling element, Paul, you're gonna like where I take this. In just a minute, hang tight. From a storytelling element, though, as a fan, you want to show faith the original. You want to do it in a 15-part remake series. Fine, do it. Shut up and take my money. I will pay you. But the thing about it is, okay, so it's a AAA game series. I get it. You want to make your money. You got to show the bad guy. You got to show Sephiroth because he's iconic at this point. It's been 20 years.
Yeah.
Most of us know who he is. Most of us, I don't think, really appreciate that story, but most of us know who he is. So if you're coming in as a new player and you've heard this story or you have some tangential experience with it, you got to show the big baddie. So what do? Okay, you play the game out, have him show up, kick your ass, and move on. And if you want to know a game that does it really well, it's a Star Wars game that does this really well. A friend of mine sent me the end cutscene. I can't remember what game it is. She'll probably comment with it, honestly. But there's a Star Wars game that they had played, and she's like, what's amazing is you get to the end and Vader shows up. And she's like, it's Vader. And you know you can't beat Vader. So the first thing that like they did was try and run out of the room.
Right.
But if you do that, Vader pulls you back and basically starts toying with you and kicking your butt. And you don't actually win this boss fight.
Right.
It's a fan service in that, yes, they wanted to show Vader, but it did it in such a way that even like the cynical fans were like, oh my God, Vader just kicked our butts. Like,
Right.
Right.
You show
I
him.
like that. That's a good example.
It's great. And you could have done the same thing, and I would have respected and appreciated. And there were, by the way, like if you know this story, there were opportunities to do that. They chose not to. Creative decisions were made.
Yeah.
And it ruins it. It ruins I feel like when these creative decisions were made, two things happened. Number one, there was no respect for the story that was built in the original that is so fantastically subtle. And even subtle in ways that I didn't appreciate. And I was a fan until I went back and did it again. And I was like, oh my God, they're building this. They're hinting at all of these things through every interaction. And by the way, they're player-driven interactions. They put it on you to do. There are whole swaths of this story you can miss.
Right.
If you don't go after them. And it's fine, they're optional, but it gives you more context. And there's something about it being player-driven rather than you put me in a pretty CG cutscene and tell me where to go. And I feel like games have I don't know if they've lost faith in us as players, or they just don't want to like.
Well, it's a combination of a couple of things. You have like the Perfect Dark Zero, which was a sequel to one of the greatest first-person shooters I've ever played, which was Perfect Dark. And Perfect Dark Zero was so poorly designed, they actually literally had to have arrows on the ground to point you where to go.
Mhm.
And so there's a combination of laziness, distrust of the player. I mean, the way they used to do it, and I don't know if they still do it this way, was that you would have the playtesters and you would see like a map of the play area, and you would have dots of where the different playtesters decided to try to go. And what you would do is you would slowly build the world to try to funnel them where you wanted them to be. And it's what you're supposed to do.
Well, that's early game design. You know, you had it is a narrow world, and you had an illusion of openness. But what has happened now is everything has become open world, so everything became ultra guided. Now, and because everything's open world, and they want you to go to specific places all the time. That's where I think Nintendo got it right with Breath of the Wild, where instead of telling you where to go in this open world, they just put stuff everywhere. So everywhere you went, there was something to do.
A world is supposed to feel large, not necessarily be large. A great example of this in gaming is BioShock Infinite. It's not a big world that you're walking around. They guide you very specifically. We want you to be walking this way. It's very linear.
Much more linear than the original.
Much more linear than the original. The original, you really could just kind of walk anywhere you want. But in BioShock Infinite, like, we have a story to tell. We want you to go here, which is one of the reasons why BioShock Infinite, I haven't quite gotten all the way through it, but it's one of the few modern games I have gotten as far as I've gotten. Because with a story, and this is why I'm going to play through Final Fantasy VII and really give it the chance and really try to explore it. I've had a long-standing complaint about games, story-driven games that are also very difficult and also feature a lot of downtime. I feel like it's like if you were watching The Godfather, and at one point there's a scene where they're like, all right, cool, we all need to leave the room. Now let's spend an hour looking for a key because the door is locked. And I'm like, I just want to know, are you going to get to the funeral and like kill Salieri or whatever? Like, I don't want this side. I'm going to get bored and lost. Like, I don't want to deal with this. Like, just get me to the next thing, like the next story element. There's pacing that matters. But with that, you also do have to respect and care about the audience. And what you're talking about, I think, is very important. And this is the reason I ripped on Kong Skull Island earlier, is because you see Kong in the first minute of the freaking movie.
Yeah.
Which you're not supposed to do. That's not how you set up a monster. With Sephiroth, it's
very much a monster reveal.
It's a monster reveal. In the first act, you can't do that. That's not how you tell a story.
And really, like, on that basis, like, if you want to see it done beautifully, stretched out over somewhere between 40 and 100 hours, like, they do it beautifully. And I think it's a thing that unfortunately we've lost respect for as creators have lost respect for somewhat, is the subtlety of storytelling. And that's the thing. I think your pacing issues, video games are one of the few mediums you have the ability to tell the story in such subtle ways.
Yeah.
It is very true. Like, modern storytelling, there is as a person deeply involved, like, because, you know, what I do is I write a lot in my spare time, and I'm always looking up, okay, what is the current thing that's going on in the writing world? Like, something that has happened, and this is almost like the James Patterson effect, where everything moves to a certain pace. It moves forward. It is constantly fast, and it doesn't want to pause and let you essentially marinate in what's going on. like that was one thing that made Harry Potter special, is the fact that it's this modern story that is just letting you marvel in this magical world. It didn't. Not every moment was dedicated to progressing the story with Voldemort. You know, some days was just this ordinary day of being a kid, and that was the entire chapter.
Things,
So,
yeah.
so you know, like you have this James Patterson effect on most modern stories where they don't want to take the time to be able to tell the story properly. It's just bam, bam, bam. Next thing happens. Next thing happens.
He's on to something right there.
Well, I'm gonna give you. We're talking about remakes today. The Resident Evil 2 remake versus the original. Now, I'm a big fan of the original Resident Evil game. I like dark city, dystopic, grungy, rundown stuff.
I mean, me too.
Yeah, of course. In the modern one, which I'm playing through right now, they added in the character of Mr. X.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those of you who have played the modern Resident Evil 2 and the original know that the Mr. X was not in the original. In the modern Resident Evil 2, number one, zombies can open doors. And number two, throughout the entire game, well, okay, not quite. There's a point you have to get to where Mr. X appears. You have this character named Mr. X, and he is invulnerable. You can't kill him, and he's always walking towards you. It's like It Follows.
Uh-huh.
Always check. So you can't stop and think about something. It forces you to progress. It's literally like the developers are standing over you with a cane, like, you better start walking or I'm going to start hitting you over the head. Like, well, I want to stop here and take a look at this. Whap, 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 whap. That's what Mr. X is in the game. And I love the game. I love Resident Evil 2 Remake. And the updated graphics, it's everything. It's fantastic. But I really don't feel like Mr. X was a necessary addition to this game. I already get the fear and sense of dread from the zombies around me anyway. And the addition of them being able to open the doors is just icing on the cake.
More terrifying.
And the fact that you have this darkness, and what Resident Evil 2 Remake does so well is its use of darkness and the flashlight. And sometimes the only thing you can see is like the thing that's 5 feet in front of you with the flashlight. That is freaky enough. All Mr. X does is it just forces you with a sense of urgency. And they already had a game like that with Resident Evil 3. You had the Nemesis, which I get that Resident Evil 3 Remake is a harrowing, fast-paced nightmare because you have the Nemesis tracking you down all the time. You didn't need to have that in Resident Evil 2 Remake as well. Although I'm satisfied by the Resident Evil 2 Remake because they stuck to the story. They didn't change it like they did.
It was a very faithful adaptation.
Very faithful.
Of the story.
With the exception of Mr. X, it is identical in story to the original Resident Evil 2.
And I think when you're remaking a property, though, you have to have respect for that material because you are introducing that story to a new group. You're doing two things when you do a remake like this. You're giving an updated view to the original fans in this case, which we all wanted. Like, we were all down for. That would have been lovely. Notice I said would have been. But then you also have to remember you're introducing the story for the first time to new people. And I think they were definitely aware of that because they introduced it in a way that could really only be appreciated by people that who didn't know the original story.
Right.
And I'm sure there are some people who are not like me who liked it and liked the original. I don't know who you are, but okay. Fine too. I don't get it.
To each their own,
To each their own. I definitely think I see players coming to it for the first time who are like, oh yeah, that was cool. But by the way, who was this dude? Like, and I've gotten those questions. But all of that aside, like, you're introducing the story, and if the story is not the same story, and you don't want to retell that story to that group of people, then what are you doing? And if you want to do a sequel or a new story, then just do a sequel or a new story.
Right.
Is my word on it.
On that.
What?
I was going to say on that note, we could because that's an interesting segue into mine.
Okay.
It's true
because you're saying it's like if you're going to do a remake, okay, so mine you have the original, you have the remake.
Mm-hmm.
You could barely tell that the remake is actually a remake.
That's true.
And so what I'm going to do right quick, I talked to Paul about this a little bit before, is I'm going to show a quick clip of what we're going to watch.
Okay.
And here.
Anybody interferes, I'll kill him. We're leaving here.
He smashed up some of the chopper pretty good.
Nobody.
Childs, go see if he got to the tractor.
Nobody gets in and out of here. Nobody. You guys think I'm crazy? Well, that's fine. Most of you don't know what's going on around here. Hold on, damn well. Sure, some of you do.
Christ.
He got most of the chopper and the tractor, and he's killed the rest of the dogs.
Gary, wait a minute. Childs, go around to the map room door. Talk to him.
As you see, the movie that I'm referring to is The Thing, which is a remake of Thing from Another World, 1951, directed by Christian Nyby. I think that's how you pronounce the last name. Is that right, Paul? Nyby?
I want to say yes, but I also am quite capable of being wrong. I got King Kong's year wrong in the earlier section, so I'm not going to take a stand on anything anymore.
Uh-oh. All right, then.
Eight wrong.
I know.
But in 1982, they released John Carpenter's The Thing. And if you know anything about these two movies, like you might know a little bit about 1982. If you've seen it, you probably love that movie. But the two movies have very little to do with each other. And it's interesting that it's a remake at all. But they're both based upon the same source material, the same novella that came out back in the 1930s. But what I gotta go into is people like to show off the gory parts. I chose a specific scene there because I don't think the movie's greatness, while these scenes are great, I don't think it's the heart of that movie is in the scenes where you're actually seeing the monster, but in the subtle moments of the characters possibly revealing who they are, or seeing the paranoia that's being built up by these characters. So just if you go back, listen to that clip again, we don't have to re-show it here, but Walter Brimley's character, Blair, is saying these things. Nobody gets in or out. Nobody. You guys think I'm crazy. Well, that's fine. Most of you don't know what's going on around here, but I'm damn well sure some of you do. Then some things occur, and they like, oh, go check on the helicopter. Go check on the snowplow, things like that. Has he destroyed all that stuff yet? And during all of that, he continues talking. Do you think that the thing wanted to be an animal? No dogs make it out 1,000 miles through the. No dog is going to make it out 1,000 miles through the cold. No, you don't understand. That thing wanted to be us. If a cell gets out, it could imitate everything on the face of the earth, and nothing can stop it. And all of these little words that he's saying is going during. He's destroying all this radio equipment. He just looks absolutely bat crazy, you know? And so you don't really get the full context of what he's saying because you think he's going nuts. But at this point, hidden in the little details, Blair might already be the thing. And he's just looking for a way to survive.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm going to choose this remake as being better than the original. It's because in these subtle notes, we get this extra layer of a story that the original didn't fully have. All right, so like, let's say the original was a fantastic movie as well. It has notes that are actually better than the remake. Like getting into some of the scripts, some of the characters, you know, the characterization overall, you can understand who is who considerably better in the remake. But when it comes to variety of types of characters, the original, The Thing from Another World, 1950 movie, had a much greater variety. There's not a single female role in the remake. Then in the original, you have this very interesting character, you know, like, well, she did have a stereotypical job for the time, but
Right.
She was a secretary to the scientist that is there.
Stereotypical, or is it just the only options, guys? Like,
Well, she could, yeah, you know, it is true in a way that's like it could have been that only option. I didn't
Gets
live
back
in
into
that
the King
era,
Kong issue
but
of
yeah, it's the King Kong issue. But she also had she had that sexual dominant role, even at the point where like she tied up the protagonist to a chair. It's like you didn't really see a dominant female in that era. You know, they're always the ones being rescued, and
right.
at no point in this movie was she the one requiring rescuing. She drove the plot forward at many points throughout the entire film, because she was this intermediary between the scientists and the military men. And so that's one of the things that was just done just a little bit better. Then another thing that was a little bit better is like the role of like the sci-fi aspect of the entire movie was overall done better in the original.
It was more overt in the original.
Yeah, it was much more overt. You had the scientists actually studying the monster throughout the entire movie, trying to figure out what was the monster. And you even had the whole idea of what is the role of science, which doesn't actually appear in the remake. Like they're not concerned about the role of science. They use science merely as a mechanism to expose what the monster is. That was the only thing that science had a part in the remake. So,
and you're arguing this is better? Like,
oh no, absolutely, because I just wanted to get out of the way the things that the original did better.
Well, yeah. All right.
Now,
I'm interested.
Now, so I do say that these movies had very little to do with each other, but the remake does make some clever references to the original. Tributes, like the use of fire to kill the monster and kerosene and things like that. That was one thing. A dog being the first victim of the monster is another thing that the two movies share. There's also a point, like the first dead character you see in the scene in the remake is a man with his throat slit, which is referenced in the original, where because the original, the first deaths in the movie they don't show it, but they're hung upside down, their throats are slit, and the blood is fed to essentially the monster's vegetable babies. I'll get into more of that in a little bit. All right.
They do refer to it as a giant carrot in the original. That
yes,
happens.
That is correct. Well, I'll get into that.
Okay, fair enough.
But both movies have the primary scientist being isolated at one point. You know, they both have to be separated from the monster and from the other people, because he is an issue. It's like after he broke all the equipment in the remake, he's separated, essentially put in jail. It's like, hey, You've gone crazy. We need you here. All right. And the other one, like, he wants to communicate with the monster, even after the monster has killed a couple of people. Like, he even at some point says, let's see, the quote is, "There are no enemies in science, only phenomena to be studied." And he looked at this creature as a phenomena rather than an adversary to be taken out. And even at points referencing, it's like, hey, for the future of our wisdom, we need to let ourselves die so the rest of humanity can see what this thing is. And now, of course, he's separated from everyone else because of that, because it's like, hey, we don't need you here because we want to live.
I just found you in the break too. Like,
yeah, that's another same thing, is they both movies have this desire to save, to survive. That's a running theme. Of course, in a survival situation, that's going to be a very common theme. Then, really, the last similarity, well, a couple others, like making a circle around the UFO when they found the UFO. Then, interesting thing is both have a prominent blood theme run through both of them. The creature in the original uses blood to feed. In the next one, they use blood to discover what the monster actually is. So those are some of the sayings and the references that the original and the remake share with each other. But now, where it really starts separating and where the remake really does shine, and why I do believe it is the objectively better movie, is in the way it presents its tone, its themes, and its monster. All three of those are nearly untouchable to even most horror movies up to this day. A lot of people consider The Thing to be the quintessential horror movie that other horror movies should strive to, which is a nice little consolation prize to the fact that back when it first released, that they were calling it the movie nihilistic and a gore fest and has no subtlety to it whatsoever. It also one magazine said that on the cover of this magazine, it said, "Is this the worst movie ever made?" That was from the Cine Fantastique magazine. It's a horror pulp fiction magazine back in the 1980s. But clearly, time has rejudged this movie from "is this the worst movie ever made?" to "this could quite possibly be the best horror movie ever made." Mm-hmm. So, why this turnaround? Well, like I said, why I used the subtle scene of Walter Brimley's character destroying all those radio things, because all the reviews before that focused hardcore on the gore and the blood and the violence within the movie. And because of the intense violence and grotesque representations of the monster, they couldn't get past that little detail to see the other things working in the background. And so, like, you have differences in tone. Like, you have, in the original, it's a very stereotypical tone of positivity, hope, and you have the science theme that we're talking about, then talking about understanding each other. So, like, the journalist is talking to Dr. Carrington, which is the scientist character I referenced. He says, "Dr. Carrington, you're a man who won the Nobel Prize. You received every kind of international kudos a scientist can attain. If you were for sale, I could sell you for $1 million to any foreign government. I'm not therefore going to stick my neck out and say you're stuffed absolutely clean full of wild blueberry muffins, but I promise you my readers are going to think so. So he has this little thing. It's like, I understand that you telling me about this alien in this way, but if I were to say to my readers the same thing, it's like, you know, you have these little themes, and then another thing is the Cold War era, so you have references to Russia and things like that. So it didn't have any unique tone to it. It was Americanism, like collective duty to like the military and little details like that. So it's not anything unique. Now, the 1982 remake, it's some of the best. Like a lot of movies today try to replicate the hopelessness, the paranoia, and that this movie has created. Because like ultimately, this movie really isn't about the monster. It's about people reacting to the monster. It's why a lot of Stephen King stories, in fact, are so popular. It's because you watch the movie It. Is the movie It about that monster, or is it how those kids' lives were uniquely created to deal with that monster? And you just learn about the history of the kids, and they're brought together because of their ability to deal with the monster. But so you have the paranoia that's running throughout the entire movie. You have the color contrast, the unique way that the movie is either a cool blue or a bright red. And you have the cool blues during moments where people are interacting with each other. With the bright reds, you know where the monster is. Essentially, like a lot of times that's represented through the coldness of the ice with the burning of a fire.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a theme, and that runs throughout the entire movie to present the tone that they wanted to bring of this cold, isolated world. All right. So when it comes to the remake, you know, you have the moments of trust and paranoia where you saw with Walter Brimley's character destroying the radios. You also had McReady characters, like at some points, here's a quote from McReady, like, somebody in this camp ain't what he appears to be. Right now, that may be one or two of us. By spring, it could be all of us. So you're looking at everybody, and anybody could be the thing right at that moment. Nobody knew. Then finally, the monster, which is probably, you know, what the movie is mostly known for. It's the original. The monster is boring. It's just a man in the suit that makes him a little weird, and it doesn't even effectively portray what it's supposed to be. In the movie, they call it, like what we were referencing, a vegetable monster.
Mm-hmm.
It's, one, not frightening to look at, and two, it doesn't look like a vegetable. The most effective way they presented the monster was not through what the monster looked like, but eventually you see these little pods that are growing as little plants coming out of soil, and you see when the blood was stolen after some injuries, they were trying to find blood, but he was feeding the blood into the plants and noticing, oh, this is what's causing the plant to grow. The scientist was like trying to figure out this monster. So it ends up being a very disappointing reveal when you finally get to see the monster in action. And it also, you know, it's off screen, it feels threatening, but as soon as you see it on screen, you're just like, oh, okay, whatever. Now, what makes the 1982 remake so effective in the way that it presents its monster, rather than it just being this generic guy in a suit, is at any point, the monster can be on screen and you don't even know it because it's a shapeshifter.
Mm-hmm.
One of the, let's see, where is it? One of the things that was said about them when they were first studying them, and this is one use of the science that puts the sci-fi into the movie, but it's not full-on really sci-fi. It's really just horror. But Brimley's character studies a couple of the corpses and sees how these cells are interacting with the things that it was trying to absorb. He says, you see, what we're talking about here is an organism that imitates other life forms, and it imitates them perfectly. When this thing attacks our dogs, it tried to digest them, absorb them, and in the process, its own cells began to imitate them. This, for instance, that's not dog. It's imitation. We got to it before it had time to finish. So you see this deformed body up on the table, and you can tell it's the monster because it hadn't had time to form. But at that point, pretty much every single character in the camp had been by themselves and could have been the monster at any point. So we already know the setup is there. Hey, any one of you can be a monster right now. So even when the monster isn't on screen, it could be on screen. And the quintessential scene of that happening is when one of the characters dies and has a heart attack and they're trying to revive him. It's one of the best scenes of the entire movie. He's taking the defibrillators and about to go down. He pops him once. Nothing happens. Then he goes down and tries to defibrillate him again. Bam. All of a sudden, the stomach just opens up and bites his hand, bites his arms, and he has to rip his arms clean off. This is clearly one of the gory scenes that people have problems with from the original release, but now it's a classic scene where we didn't know he was a monster until they revealed it right there in front of us. And the monster is horrific. The design of it is terrible, and they had to take the flamethrower and flame him down, and he set him on fire. Then you have this whole sequence of events of you see this monster that can spread and escape because each part of it is its own living being. So as the body lay dying, the head is falling off of the body and it escapes. It turns into this little spider crawling thing, and the characters turn around as like
flashbacks to Half-Life over here.
They look at the spider head and it's like, you gotta be kidding me. I did my own self-censorship, so I'm going to go over there.
That's some restraint right there. But the great thing about the thing is that it is an exercise in extremes. It's an exercise in extreme mystery. The thing that makes horror great is the mystery of it, the thing that you don't know, because your imagination fills in the terror. And then showing you something way worse than what your imagination would allow. Because that scene he's talking about where he sticks the guy sticks his arms into the defibrillator, that's one of the first times that you really get a good look at what the monster can do. There's an earlier scene where they do show it kind of absorbing the dogs, and it's gross, but
it's not terrifying.
It's this kind of writhing mass, and you're just like, oh crap, well this is gross.
This is gross looking.
But then it becomes like Invasion of the Body Snatchers for like an hour, where it's just, are you who you say you are? And that's what's terrifying about Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and most of the thing is that it's the mystery. And then in one moment, the body horror, terrifying makeup, not CGI, but special effects, in one moment, because it's a calm moment in the movie. Really, like you think like you use a defibrillator on the guy, but you're so in that moment where you're just like, oh, well, he wants to get him revived, and like, okay,
Well, they have you completely distracted too at that point because
Yeah.
they're having an argument because McCready had been left out in the snow alone, and they were suspecting him to be one of the monsters.
right.
And he was standing there with a flamethrower, and it's like, hey, you take a step toward me. You take a step toward me, and I'm going to burn y'all.
Completely pulled to someone else.
Yes. And bam, it appears where you're not expecting it to happen.
Which is like, I'm not a fan of jump scares, but this isn't a jump scare. It's not. It's just like you see him go up with the paddles, and the stomach opens, and you're like,
a realization moment.
What?
It's not really so much a jump scare
Yeah.
as it is a like
you know,
moment
it's
of
this. It
You don't
dawns-
even know to be scared at first.
You're just like, oh, the stomach opened up because what? I don't think that's supposed to happen.
So Jeremy, if you don't mind me co-opting you for a second, because there's a
Go
couple
ahead.
I did get to, because I am trying to stay out of the weeds on my topic tonight. But it's funny how this has turned into there are some themes coming out from all three of our properties where there's a definite monster reveal theme.
Yep.
And there's a subtlety of storytelling.
Yeah.
Because
Oh yeah.
to yours is credit, I think we'll get into this more in a minute, but where your property went off the rails and created a new thing that's arguably better than the original, they do seem to have stayed pretty thematically true to what was supposed to be there, which is one of my big complaints with the FF7 remake. But also, like, that's a lot of subtle storytelling. And I think a lot of the places where I, and maybe to some extent Paul, have problems with our properties, I don't know how subtle you can get about a giant
Well, that's the thing. It's not supposed to be subtlety. That's the great thing about King Kong, is that it's supposed to be spectacle. And what
it's supposed to be spectacle, but you got to take time to get to the spectacle.
You still have to take time with the subtlety of the reveal. And it's funny how important those things come out of in storytelling.
Because we're talking about misdirection
all
here
three
in the
of
thing.
These things, it's conceptually.
Yeah, from the opening scene, they set up the monster's arrival, and you're just confused about what's going on. It's like, why are these Norwegian people that one of the character keeps calling Swedes shooting at this dog? And
I will say something interesting from a storytelling perspective too, and it comes to play in several of the games that I'm talking about, is sometimes it's okay to just leave your audience confused.
Oh, absolutely.
But sometimes it's a great storytelling device to drop your audience into a story and have them have to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, like writers want to avoid confusion, but they don't realize that it can be one of the best tools out there for you to use. But like where confusion becomes a bad storytelling event is if you make something too complex, it leaves the person can't understand it.
Right.
You got to make it to where they can start putting the pieces together, where it's like intrigue and mystery is going to naturally leave a person wondering and somewhat confused about what's going on.
Right. Well, this is why I love the first King Kong so much, is that you don't even know there's a mystery at first, because they're going to film a movie, and then they land on this island. Then the mystery that you're supposed to at a later point realize there's a mystery.
Yes.
Because then they land on the island, and you're like, oh, why are they stealing this woman? Is this they're gonna go rescue her? And then, oh, they're gonna sacrifice her. Oh, there's a giant monkey. Crap. Yeah, that's what's supposed to happen with mystery.
That's the absolute beautiful thing about the original Final Fantasy VII is you're being misdirected.
I'm glad you're doing it for me.
You're being misdirected with the idea that
Shinra,
Shinra is your main bad guy that you're chasing after. And then all of a sudden you take this huge spin. It's like, wait a second, what am I doing now?
Jeremy. You start the game literally as a mercenary working with a group of eco-terrorists.
Yeah.
Somehow, like, go from fighting this, like, evil corporation that is a power company to, oh, wait, no, this guy's going to destroy the planet for his own ends. Like, we got to go stop that. That's the bigger problem right now. Like,
and you're playing as an unreliable narrator, too. And you're playing as an unreliable narrator, too.
But for the first 10 hours of that game, you are being fully misdirected as to what your objective is. Mm-hmm. Now, it still plays a part. And that's why, like, one of the reasons I didn't get too deep into the synopsis of the game is there's a lot of storylines going on simultaneously here. But I'm glad Jeremy mentioned that for me because I was thinking about that while he was talking. Because, like,
right.
the level of misdirection that they do, and when I said sometimes it's okay for the audience to be confused, Final Fantasy games used to be phenomenal at dropping you into a world with no idea what was going on.
Right.
And somehow making you come to care about the intricacies of that world. And that's an important storytelling device as far as subtlety, which we've as discussed is important, but also making your audience feel involved with the story.
Well, there's something about Final Fantasy VII that I don't want to say this as a reveal for anything that happens in the new game, but the original game was born out of loss. The creator of that.
Steal my thunder. I was waiting for an opportunity to, like, bring this up. I'm, like, trying to get to a point.
Well, there it is. It's your point to make. You didn't make it when we were originally talking about it. Like, I might bring this up later.
I know, because Jeremy, like,
I was like, oh, this is too good of a segue, you know?
And,
it was a good segue, but this is such an important point.
Background.
Right, but it's such an important point about the game. I want to give you the glory.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's go for it.
Great. Now it's on me. No, but I'm gonna, in a strange way, I'm gonna wrap this back into something that Jeremy's talking about, and that has to do with theme, and the main theme of this story. I don't want to call it a game because I feel like calling it a game turns people off to it. I don't know.
It's a story that happens to be a game.
It's a story that happens to be a game, and the main theme of this story is A, loss, and B, that, you know, that there's a weird thing that arches through all of the smaller storylines that take place that makes you realize that sometimes the world just doesn't work out. Like, sometimes you don't get happily ever after. It's not the perfect rainbows and sunshine and roses ending that you wanted. And that really comes across in this story from, first of all, major losses that you have as a group of characters. And once again, going back to things that the game for 97 did really well, making you feel emotionally involved with these characters. But it throws not only through the main overarching themes of loss, and there's a main death that everyone knows about, who knows anything about the game, but also even in the losses of mistakes made and regrets and things you did or didn't do. And that's a major theme. But the other theme of it is identity, which is, there's two things about these themes, is that they're very relatable. And they're very, at the end of the day, while told through a kind of complex story, they're very basic human themes and very basic human stories. And I think that's something, going back to even The Thing or Kong, even your argument earlier, Paul, about, the original Kong being a story about men's hubris, that's still a relatable story. That's a very simple, relatable theme that you can still make stories around. And I would argue that stories are often better told about those kind of simple, relatable themes rather than, I'm going to use the word convoluted rather than complex, because I'm all for a complex story. But I will call what the remake did convoluted. And if you've seen the ending, you know what I mean. And that's what I mean when I say I hate the meta universe aspects and things like that, is that becomes convoluted. That's not a complex human story. That's a convoluted story that no one has any basis for relation to.
Well, no, because it's not telling something that matters, that we have a stake in. It's the Marvel problem of you kill somebody off and you bring them right back. It's the Dragon Ball Z problem. You kill somebody, I'm not invested in this. it doesn't matter to me because, well, there's no problem. We can just bring somebody back. What's
But
the deal?
By the way,
go ahead. I was gonna make a point about your.
I was going to make
Go ahead.
a random aside to the
What?
whole ending and dealing with the different fates, the worlds, and things like that. It actually inspired me in my story to say, hey, you're trying to say fate's a natural thing. You know what? I think fate's an unnatural thing, and so that's going to be. That actually is a theme that runs throughout my story, is the fact that fate is unnatural. So, like, you inspired me because I disliked you that much. Go ahead.
But no, I think that's an important point to make. One of my big issues with this game is that the overarching metaphor at the end of the game is fighting fate, and fate in this case being a metaphor for what the fans of the game wanted. It's very ham-fisted and it's very obvious to anybody who played the game. I think I don't think it's that hard to miss.
Right.
But
nope, it's right there. It's like
it's a very ham-fisted metaphor. But
Yeah.
my problem with fighting fate in this game is if fate is a power at play, it makes irrelevant everything else. If fate is what it is, then the choices you make are irrelevant in that case. And so I'm interested, Jeremy, in like you taking that tack now, because that's what angers me about the way that they did this is it removes meaning from I'm having to think real hard about words tonight. I don't know what's wrong with me. But it removes meaning from anything that came before.
Yeah.
And
it really does.
Anything that you felt like you as the character accomplished,
You didn't actually accomplish it because it's fate.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It no longer nothing matters. And especially in a game that was so much about loss and facing things and going forth and really struggling through the grimy kind of shithole the world can be.
It completely, like, one thing we talked about is like it completely ruined the loss that it happened because it's like if it was fate that this was going to happen, it takes her decision to go forward with it out of it. And it just ruins the meaning behind the original sacrifice.
It does. And that's my problem with this as a remake is it thematically ruins the original. And to your point earlier, you were talking about themes and stories. I was gonna say before you said that, I was gonna say on the thing, it's funny because yes, it's a monster story, but it's also a story about how people react to monsters and how people react to situations.
But that's any
how they
good
react
monster.
to the
That's the more
unknown.
interesting story.
Yeah, that's what makes made Walking Dead compelling.
Made Walking Dead. I was gonna make that reference earlier.
Yeah, but
That's what made The Mist one of the best monster movies of all time.
No one's watching it for the zombies. If we're talking about Walking Dead, I remember telling certain people to watch Walking Dead, and they're like, "I don't want to watch it. It's a zombie show." I'm like, "No, it's not a zombie show. It's a human psychology show."
Right.
Like,
man is the real monster. That's almost always what is compelling about a story. Look how the people treat each other in the thing about how they're at each other's throats because they can't trust each other.
I'm really going to enjoy you actually playing FF7.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
There are themes in there that you'll appreciate. And it's funny that we went that way because what is this except a story about people's reactions to the horrors of other people?
Right. And what Cloud did with his own trying to block out who he was as just a low-level soldier, and then he built himself up in his mind, and like he goes to his hometown, and they're like, "We don't know who this guy is." It's the stuff that his own mind did
to cope with
what he was, and that's the thing. Here's the thing about all this. What you two are talking about with your remakes and the originals is that you're loving the thread of the sanctity of the story. and this examination and psychology. And this is the thing. Kong comes from the opposite.
The opposite end of the spectrum.
Kong
Really does.
needs to be a simple story from an era when mystery was possible. And the later iterations of Kong all try to make the story more complex or relatable or about the political climate of the time or trying to make a commentary on an era. Because so much of the 2005 movie I'm watching, they're making so much commentary about the 1930s. You know, Mae West would never fit in that dress. And like, oh, shut up, Carl Denham. The whole great thing about the original is you have a bunch of dumb people doing dumb stuff, and it bites them in the butt.
Ultimate.
Right.
It's, and the thing is that it, and the thing is, when I'm talking about that King Kong only works in that era, I mean King Kong. We can tell stories about man's hubris all day long, but we cannot do it with the same mystery about the natural world that we had in the 1930s. That didn't work in 1976 when they redid King Kong. You have this 50-foot brute that looks goofy because of the dumb technology at the time and the wooden acting of Jessica Lange, who didn't get another role for years, and she said she didn't deserve it, so she took a bunch of acting lessons, and now she's amazing because she's in American Horror Story season 3, and she's fan-frickin-tastic.
Amazing in American Horror Story.
Amazing in American Horror Story 3, season 3. And you have the 2005, which is making a commentary about this veneer of 1930s of let's all talk like we're in the 1930s. And they're not doing a very good job of it because it's all a commentary on it. And they have the 2017, which is trying to take place during the Vietnam War, making a commentary about the war. And it's just too layered. If I'm going to have a fun, mystery, dumb horror movie about a giant ape, do it in an era when I can reasonably expect that this exists somewhere. I would totally buy that this exists somewhere. It's the only way that that movie works. And the simplicity of it is what's beautiful about it. It doesn't need to be complex. It doesn't need a lore or a history. It is a snapshot of an era that only works in that very narrow window.
But with that,
I mean, you know, Paul is so passionate about King Kong.
I feel like that's a good place to conclude our debate tonight.
I don't feel like you got to finish though. Like,
no.
Geez, Paul just like came in and Konged it out. Like, all the
mic drop.
It took way too long.
He's been wanting his win, and I think he got it tonight.
He got it twice in a row.
On the same topic.
But here's the thing, because this was a battle of remake versus original. And the thing is, like your guys' stories, The Thing and Final Fantasy VII, let me move this back to where it was. They both could be made to and should have been made better, because The Thing did get its prequel in 2010, which aside from the CG was actually pretty good. I liked it.
Oh, no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't talk about it because I wanted to keep it focused on those. And
yeah,
I consider, since it's a prequel, it's not technically a remake. I
think
neither is mine.
Right. It's true. But the thing about the 2010 prequel is it fills in too many gaps, and they work too hard to fill in too many gaps, almost to a George Lucas level. And with Final Fantasy, like, it could have been so great. It should have been. They had everything.
You had the
budget.
All you had to do was, one, keep Sephiroth out of it. You know, right. Like he shouldn't even showed up in the president's office.
No, he shouldn't have. That's true. You're actually right. Like,
and
the fact that you know that makes me appreciate.
Keep the whispers out of it too.
Right.
Those two things.
But really, other than that, like this is, like I said earlier, what makes the knife cut so much deeper. Like, I feel like I've been gutted because I don't know if I said this last time I talked about it. I wanted to vomit through about the last hour and a half. Like, it was everything I could do, and there luckily wasn't anything in my stomach because it was 5 a.m. But like, thing is that, like, what twisted the knife all the worse is that it was a relatively faithful recreation up until the last hour and a half, with the exception of certain things that were dropped in that we didn't know were playing into that at the beginning. That being the whispers and the kind of visions of Sephiroth where he appears to Cloud, which there was no reason for. We don't need to do that early. Like your disembodied voice, like hinting, would have been fine. Like,
right.
But like there are some moments in the original where it's like Cloud will have a fit. Paul, you're gonna appreciate this when you actually sit down with it. And he'll hear voices which are like done by black screen with white text, just like, or vaguely opaque over the top of this. And they're all very cryptic. Like even now, I'm not sure, like, is that a mistranslation or is this what they mean? Like,
right.
But like, you could have had that level of hinting. And honestly, anything else that was added just for the sake of adding, like, I'd be fine with. Most of it was decent expansion on the story. So when you get through like what looks like a relatively faithful remake with a little bit of good expansion on the story, and then the knife gets thrust in like that and twisted around, like you're just like,
yeah.
I'll say this: at least The Last of Us 2 twist the knife early.
At least they spoiled it. Like,
right.
Yeah.
At least they spoiled it and saved you your $60.
Man.
Not that
I hate living in the spoiler era where it's too hard to avoid spoilers.
It is. And another reason that going back to Jeremy's, we may have to do like a little mini session on Jeremy's question about spoilers.
Yeah.
That was a great question. But going back to Jeremy's question on spoilers, like, I had to beat this game in like a couple of days because I couldn't have avoided the spoilers. And like, not even like, I remember going to school in the era of like PS1 and 64 video gaming, and like everyone was playing the same games, but because it took us all some time because homework and school and the internet was not the thing it is today, like you could relatively get through a game without being spoiled.
Yeah.
Like you don't beat it in 24 hours, you're gonna find it on YouTube.
Gosh, yes.
Advent of forums and social media.
At least you can avoid the forum. Social media, like, you know, if Daryl dies in Walking Dead, you won't know about it before you get to that episode unless you're watching the
yeah, like I just remember like thinking Baby Yoda wasn't an important part of the show because literally 10 minutes after the episode was released, I saw Baby Yoda memes.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks later, it's like, oh, that was the big reveal at the end of the episode? Well, thank you for letting me have that pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah. The problem is that like you can't even go back to something. You can't like hear about like, oh, you hear about the show The Mandalorian? Let me tell you all the stuff that really matters right now. Like that's what happens now. Like you can't, you know, like there was a time when if you wanted to know how a game ended, you either played it or read GamePro religiously, and that was about it. Like now, if I go on to Reddit, it's like, here's the ending of the thing you care about. Like,
yeah, it's on like to make sure they spoil you. It's like they know this thread is going to get taken down within 30 minutes, but they're going to spoil 100,000 people by just putting the spoiler in the title of the thread.
But I'm going to go back to something you guys said at the beginning of the night tonight. Honestly, the creators, whether it's game developers, whether it's movie producers or whatever, are spoiling it for us. They're giving us every scene that matters in probably 10 2-minute trailers.
Yeah.
That's 20 minutes of footage. That's a quarter of a movie. I mean, like,
I wish more things could take the route horror movies take and put incorrect and misleading information in their trailers.
Yeah.
So that can even screw over horror movies because that's what happened with The Village. They misled people making think it's a monster movie when it wasn't.
Well, I mean, misrepresenting what the movie is something else, but I am fine with like what Pixar has done for a long time, and they really did well with The Incredibles, which was the trailer was just stuff that could take place in that universe, like Mr. Incredible. And it's not in the movie. Like Mr. Incredible trying to get his suit on, but he's too fat and he can't get the belt around himself. And like there's that was like the whole trailer, and that's never in the movie.
And I'm great with that because I'm really tired of seeing like movie producers and game companies and like TV shows are weirdly not as guilty of this, maybe because I don't have cable. But like I don't find myself having this problem with TV unless I go on YouTube.
Right.
Not YouTube, Facebook.
Well, it's also probably because like we avoid the next time on Dragon Ball Z on. Yeah.
We do, but like I'm really tired of let's go back to talking earlier about like what lowest common denominator have creators chosen to create to where they feel like they need to give us everything in the trailer and lead us with a trail of arrows on the floor,
okay.
Let us work at it.
I blame J.J. Abrams for a lot of this.
God.
We're getting into it.
I just opened up the...
I've been waiting to talk about ever since the Star Trek reboot, which I liked a lot. J.J. Abrams, for a guy who talks so much about the mystery box, which is bullcrap anyway, but he loves this idea of mystery, and yet he doesn't know how to do it at all. And Star Wars Episode 7, everything you've talked about with Final Fantasy 7, what is it with the number 7? It's a very unlucky number, apparently, in franchises.
Stay away from it.
Stay away from it. But Star Wars Episode 7 does everything that you're talking about with Final Fantasy 7, where the first 3/4 of that movie, and you and I saw that opening night.
We did.
The first 3/4 of the movie, I was a squealing little fangirl. Just this taken for the ride. I didn't, wasn't caring that it was just episode 4.2.
It was so much fan service.
It was just, here's Han and Chewie, and here's R2-D2, and here's all the characters you care about. And up until, and I was just kind of harboring some doubts I had of some things up until, and spoilers for a movie that came out 5 years ago, by the way, up until they killed Han. And at that moment, I wasn't like, oh no, they killed Han. I remember we were in the theater and we were like, huh? Okay, well, that's a decision, I guess. And at that moment, I started just thinking back through the movie. I was kind of like half paying attention to the movie at that moment. I was like, okay.
Because it broke it enough that you could like think about what you'd seen.
Right. And then I started thinking about, okay, in the original trilogy. Now, granted, I will say that with the original trilogy, George Lucas never knew that when the next movie was going to be made, so he didn't have like a lot of the opportunity for world building of like, I'll do this in the next movie, because at any given moment, he just like, well, the series might not continue. Sequels weren't as big of a thing back then. But
for the best.
But we didn't get these reveals of things until, like, you didn't know that Darth Vader was Luke's father until the end of the second movie.
Probably a good decision.
Probably a good decision. You didn't realize that Leia was Luke's sister until partway through the third movie.
End of the third movie.
Like, it was like halfway through when Yoda dies that he tells Luke, there is another. And then you realize, and even then your brain's like, well, what does he mean by that? And then you're starting to mull over it, and they slowly reveal that they're talking about Leia being his sister. And it took all these things built. And what happens in Episode 7? They can't wait 2 seconds after Han and Leia are in the same room and like, Kylo Ren's my son. Like, what? Just let that build for a while. And
they don't know how to do it. Either they don't
do it
us as an audience, or they don't know how to do it. I'm on the fence as to which one I think it is.
I think it's a combination of both. And I think J.J. Abrams doesn't know how to do I know how he doesn't know how to do reveals, because he also reveals Kylo Ren's face at the exact wrong moment in that movie. The place where they needed to reveal not only his face, but who he was on that bridge at the very end of the movie. Because then it would have been an interesting question in your mind as to why Han was walking out onto the bridge in the first place. Because the whole thing about him is that he is the scoundrel. He is the guy who's always about self-preservation, even up until this point in this movie, which is years after we've already gotten used to him being a scoundrel. He and Han are out, or he and Chewie are out being scoundrels. And so it would have been a huge question in that moment. What is he doing? Why is he doing that? And he goes out there, and you see Kylo Ren take off his helmet, and there's this fresh-faced boy under there, and he calls him Ben for the first time. And then Ben calls Han father for the first time. You have all this emotional weight that is just dropped on this one scene that would have been incredible as a bombshell, but instead is spread throughout the rest of the movie in all the wrong places. Why have the reveal that Kylo Ren is Ben Solo in the first act of the movie? And why reveal his face in the second act of the movie? There's no emotional weight to him being this fresh-faced boy when he's talking to Rey. You don't need it. He needs to be the mysterious villain in that scene. He has to be the mysterious villain in that scene. And to humanize him in this moment when he's supposed to be threatening her is pointless.
All that did was got all the fangirls to ship both of them together.
That's really all it did. But no, you're right. And this is a series that needs a mysterious villain.
Yeah.
It's like FF said, it needs its mysterious villain.
You need Sephiroth to be, and if you want to reveal him in that first game, great. Do it either the way that Sydnee and Jeremy have been talking about, which is a great idea of having him just hand your butt to you. There are villains in games that have done this as story points that you're not supposed to win against.
For a long time.
And it's fine. And fans accept this. Or do like in the original game, one of the greatest moments when I first played Final Fantasy VII, this is like 8 years ago when you introduced me to the game. And one of the moments where you get to fight alongside Sephiroth as a show of how powerful he is. You're fighting this dragon, this impossible dragon. You see the stats and they're just going off the side of the screen. And you go over and you hit it with the Buster Sword. And he's like, bink, against the dragon.
It's literally 13 versus like 3,742, I think.
Yeah.
And I know that because I played that section.
Played it so much.
Night.
And you
I played it legit last night. I looked at it.
Exactly. Because then you have Sephiroth go against the dragon, and he kills the dragon in one hit. And that's the thing, is that they reveal his strength like he's
by showing how powerless you are.
You're an ant standing next to a giant is how you feel in that moment. And that's your reveal in person of Sephiroth. Is you're like, holy crap, well, good thing I'm fighting alongside him. Would hate for him to be the enemy.
Wait, that was 5 years ago, and he's not on our side anymore.
He's not on our side anymore. Oh, crap. That's the reveal. We're talking about mystery. We're going to do this episode pretty soon. I wrote a while ago a writing prompt.
Now it's really perfect.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, exactly. Because I
didn't realize how great a lineup that was. That was great.
It was. Because a while ago I wrote a writing prompt, and my favorite thing on Reddit is writing prompts, because there's an art to writing something that guides you just enough to get interesting stories. Because your writing prompt can either be too narrow and you'll get like maybe one interesting story out of it, and there's not a lot to go. You've already given too much in your prompt, or it's so open-ended that all the creativity is on the other person, that they would have to do all the heavy lifting, in which case your prompt is pointless anyway.
Yeah.
It's a fine little narrow point where you have to just thread this needle to make something where you have enough mystery to say, okay, I can make something that fits within this world you've created, but is still wholly mine and still has enough guesswork and enough holes in it that I can fill things in. And that's a really hard thing to do. So the writing prompt that I wrote, and we're going to show our results of this in a future episode. But I wrote, it's these two people standing, is these like mid-30s guys standing.
Did you write the prompt or did? Okay, so you posted the prompt.
I posted the prompt.
Okay.
This is because this is a conceit that I think about a lot. Is this this revelation that somebody you think you know isn't who you think they know, then isn't who you think they are. And it was, hey, come on, man, when are you gonna stop this whole imaginary friend thing? You're too old for this. And like, yeah, I know, but it just seems so real. It's just hard to let go of. It's like, you're in your 30s now. Get some real friends that aren't, like scaly monsters with forked tongues. The guy's like, I never told you what my imaginary friend looks like. And that's where it cuts off. It's right there. Because you're like, oh, crap. How then? And that's where the questions come. There's only like probably 30 different directions that could possibly go in. And that's what's interesting about it, is it gives you just enough to be able to build a world. it's not too vague, it's not too specific. And that's what's really interesting about a good writing prompt, is that you give somebody just enough to be able to go on. Another one that I wrote a long time ago was a guy's talking to a doctor, and he says, "So doc, if I take these pills, the voices will go away, right?" Like, yes, just take the pills and the voices will go away. He's like, "You're sure?" "Yes, you'll never hear her again." "Doc, I never said the voice was female." And that's where the writing prompt cuts off. And I love this idea of, then what's the power play between these two? How do you, as the person what are you trying to figure out then about this person? How do they know what you know? And so there's a lot of mystery that can be explored in that. That's what's interesting about mystery.
I knew exactly the direction I'd go with that one.
I'd be interested to see. Well, I spent some time writing a story based on my own prompt with the imaginary friend, and I'm looking forward to us being able to do this, because part of it's like I like seeing. I want to see where we come up with stories, and also show people, like, hey, when we're talking about what we like so much about these stories, we also know what we like. We can create and craft things based on these ideas, and kind of put money where our mouth is, And so I really like the idea of something that's mysterious. And this is why I had a problem with San Junipero, is because I think that it gave away too much early on, even though it's probably unfair of me to expect that out of that episode, because that's not what necessarily the episode's trying to do. It's more of a commentary and less of a mystery. But I like mystery, and that's what's so great about
it. I get you.
Yeah, well, all of our properties tonight have that element of mystery, whether it's the reveal of a giant ape that you weren't expecting to see on an island, whether it's this terrifying villain that you didn't even realize was the villain, and causing, like, the meteor to come down and maybe destroy the earth, or whether it's who to trust. The basis of humanity is that we're social creatures, and now you've removed this element of trust from us because this monster can be any one of us. This element of mystery in all these stories is what's so compelling about storytelling.
Jeremy, it's a commentary on COVID-19.
Yeah, I thought about that earlier. Like, what a story for Jeremy to pick right now. Who's the diseased one? You don't know.
Well, what happened is, they decided we're all the diseased ones. Let's just burn the place down.
Right.
And let the disease not escape. Bam.
Well,
there's the solution.
I'll tell you something really interesting I thought about today, because I had to stop by the bank, because they all had that signs like only come in by appointment only. I'm like, oh, of course, it's to fight the spread of disease. And I realized, oh, no, it's because everybody's wearing masks now. So if you walk into a bank, you look like a bank robber.
Yeah. Yep.
It took a while for that to dawn on me. I'm like, oh, I'm like walking up with just a mask on, just into the lobby of the bank. This looks good. It just looks like a line of bank robbers.
Each one handing a note. Give me all your money.
Photo, and then, like, 4 years from now, out of context.
Yeah.
The most hilarious memes.
Yep. Memes in the time of COVID.
Oh, gosh. Well, we explored a lot of fun topics tonight. We hope that you all learned something. And we really appreciate being able to bring you these stories that we all love so dearly. And so, okay, so in the end, based on our premise, who do you guys vote for?
Let us know down in the comments below.
I mean, you two, not the viewers.
I'm putting it to the viewers.
I'm talking to the viewers, man.
This wasn't a rhetorical question. This is a very pointed question to the two people I am talking to at this moment.
Still, let us know down in the comments.
Still let us know
below.
down in the comments, because we wanted to get your thoughts on this too. I think everybody made really good points tonight.
I think we made points that remakes need to be well thought out. Like,
we do.
That subtle
like
storytelling is important.
Yeah. Now, like, we determined that a remake doesn't need to retell the story exactly, but it needs to capture at least the spirit of what's going on.
I agree.
Yes,
I
agree.
think I said that King Kong, the original King Kong, which cannot be remade, the spirit can only exist in the original.
That's another podcast, Paul.
It may be, but it's this one right now, so we gotta
I know.
We got to deal with what we got.
deal with what we got. Sydney, Final Fantasy VII can the remake just did not. It's not even a remake.
I wouldn't even call it a remake.
And Jeremy, you argued that
Even that's how it was sold.
the remake was not only the superior film, but it's the one that shall be remembered, and rightfully so. So, you two, very specifically, Sydney and Jeremy.
Oh, I already gave my vote earlier.
You gave your vote earlier, which was?
I said you.
Oh, that's right. You did. That's right. I can't remember because we've talked a lot about
We talked
this,
a lot tonight.
and I can't remember what happened. Sydney, what's your vote?
I mean, I'll hand it to you. I do think Jeremy makes some great points about
Agreed.
being still in spirit a remake, but also a way better property at the end of the day.
It is.
You know, and I'm. Here's the thing: I don't think anyone's wrong tonight.
No one's wrong. No one
one's
can.
wrong. Sometimes some of us are wrong. No.
It's hey, I've been.
Ender's
admit-
Game, right?
Sometimes we look at each other and we're like,
Oh,
Jeremy won.
Oh, no. But
That's the one that didn't get recorded. So.
yeah, that's right. That's right. So, but and I appreciate it because here's the thing. For me, when I came into this, I saw the point being is what can be remade is not just what is superior, but what story actually makes sense. And I think that with King Kong, the original one is the only one that makes sense for the era that it came out in.
On that basis, yes, because I think FF7 definitely could have been remade and could have been remade into
Should have been.
That it should have been. Or it should have been left well enough alone.
Yeah.
But it definitely could have existed as a property that I think would have brought new fans in, a new generation, people who were not gamers then.
Yeah.
It really could have been used to introduce a whole new fan base while paying, honoring the original to the fan base that exists.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that they had all the resources and had all the tools and had the opportunity and didn't do, right by the fans of the original, in my opinion. Or fans like me who feel like the story should have been told in a way that honored it. But it definitely could have been remade and probably should be remade.
Yeah. I actually would like to see them maybe because we can patch things these days. Like,
I mean, we can patch things. They patch things. I'll actually buy into that. But.
Hey, they've done something similar before. They probably won't do it with this. I don't see them do it at all with this. But with Final Fantasy 15, they changed an entire chapter of the game that was considered the weakest chapter of the game, and improved it considerably, story-wise.
In my wildest dreams, I wake up to a patch. But
it's not going to happen. But
it's not gonna happen.
But hey, look, Bungie got rid of Peter Dinklage like he never existed in Destiny. So who knows?
Which was a shame because I feel like his commentary was the only thing that made me want to play Destiny.
That one came from the moon. I love his original lines, and that you can still get the Peter Dinklage version if you really, really work hard.
You have to go buy the disc version.
Yeah,
because if you do the digital version, it's already been patched.
It's already Nolan North at that point. So
yeah.
So all right, well then.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's nice to win one for once. It's because usually I'm just the guy who intros and exits and tells some funny jokes in between and just says this thing annoys me, and then you guys make better points. So it was a great episode. I feel it was fun talking about these things. I love it. The great thing is we're all super passionate about the properties that we came in with, and we all appreciate the other properties too. I think, which I think makes for the best kinds of shows. So join us next time. We have a Discomfort Zone coming up. I think I got the best end of this deal. Usually one of us in the Discomfort Zone gets the good end of the deal. And this week, I know it was me because I loved my challenge. I was challenged to Parasite, the movie Parasite, which is fan-freaking-tastic. Not only is it in the genre I'm not a big fan of, which is not really a horror. It is kind of more psychological, just terrifying weirdness. But
More
it is
dark comedy, yeah.
It's a dark comedy. And I loved it. I absolutely loved the movie. Jeremy, you got challenged to a playlist of Pitbull songs.
Woo!
And I do not envy you. Although I may ask you to share it with me so that I can actually like take a listen to a couple so I can talk intelligently about this by the time we get there. And Sydney, I am so sorry.
I hate you.
I challenged you to Borat. A movie, because here's the thing. With the Discomfort Zone, it is about trying to understand why certain things are great and why certain things are loved. Borat is one of those movies where I don't get why people love this movie, but it was a cultural phenomenon when it came out. And there are people who are saying that it was like one of the greatest movies of all time, and it's so hilarious. I saw like the first half, and I couldn't go any further.
This is not promising for me.
I thought it was the dumbest thing I had ever seen.
Well, if you thought it was dumb, there's no way I'm making it through this movie.
But here's the thing, but the people were quoting it constantly. Hell,
Very nice.
In Bob's Burgers, they did a bunch of Borat impressions.
Yeah.
And like I remember that, like, oh, not you too, Bob's Burgers, please, no. So it's one of those things where it may, I don't think it's great, but it's loved. So
you can't even see the virtue in it, and yet you're inflicting it upon me, and you know I hate this kind of comedy.
I had to sit through Lifted by Bright Eyes.
I didn't challenge you to Lifted by Bright Eyes. I didn't even know
I know.
who Bright Eyes was.
I know.
That was Jeremy.
What I'm saying is, every now and again, we all have to suffer in this.
But Jeremy likes Bright Eyes when he challenged.
I know he did. I don't understand it. I
feel
tried.
Like
I could challenge you to Borat because I enjoyed Borat.
Well, there you go.
For one scene in particular.
It has its moments.
I feel like this is going to be a lot like Napoleon Dynamite, which I hated, and everyone
I
thought
love Napoleon Dynamite.
Love Napoleon Dynamite so much.
I don't.
I know you don't, and I'm sorry for that.
I don't get this kind of my kind of comedy is like this Danish film called Green Butchers, where it's literally these two butchers who start,
all you had to say was Danish, and I immediately knew it was dark and terrifying.
Dark and amazing.
Yeah.
That is my kind of comedy. It's a comedy.
It's sure.
It's great.
Enjoy your Birkin hair, making people in the pies. It's just terrifying.
And you challenged me to Borat.
And I challenge you to Borat because we are trying to understand. We're trying to.
I don't need to understand that. I'm good.
So come back next time on the Discomfort Zone when Sydney reports back on a Sacha Baron character. Oh, we lost Jeremy. I think we were talking about Borat too much. Well, come back next time when hopefully 3 of us will be here. And I hope that y'all have enjoyed this thoroughly. I'm Paul Stadden. That's Sydney Johnson. And Jeremy Brazel is now in the Phantom Zone, I guess, along with General Zod. So bye, I guess.